with Adolf Hitler. And he negotiated a treaty with the Nazis in 1938. Okay, and then he returned home to Britain. He was lauded as a hero for having negotiated this treaty. And he held up the piece of paper with the treaty and he said, "We have achieved peace in our lifetime." Okay, peace in our lifetime, 1938. Okay, in 1939, World War II started. Oops. So he thought he had achieved peace in his lifetime. The very next year there was war. Okay, so I guess that didn't work. Okay, and somebody mute. I'm hearing. I'm alone.
Yeah.
Maria, Maria Fernando, mute. Okay, thanks. So this has happened again and again. So World War I in 1918 was called the war to end all wars. Okay, it didn't. Okay, in 1938, Chamberlain tried to negotiate with the Nazis. He thought he achieved peace in his lifetime. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Even after World War I, there was the League of Nations that tried to organize nations to prevent war. It didn't work. It fizzled, okay? But people didn't give up after World War II. So after World War II, they have the United Nations, okay? And I was going to show you a film of the signing of the United Nations Charter in 1945. And the newsreel says that this is finally an attempt for nations to end war, okay? And so everybody was really excited that finally now we were going to end war, okay? And of course, you know, since 1945, we've had plenty of wars, so that didn't work either, okay? But what I want you to see from all these films is that at that time, all the participants thought they had a reasonable path to peace, okay? And they also thought it was going to work in their lifetime, okay? They were wrong, but at least they had an idea of something to do, and they had the expectation that it was going to work. Okay. This is the text of the United Nations Charter. Okay. And the first thing it says is, "We, the people of the United Nations." And there's a typo in the original. In the original, it says, "We, the peoples," plural, "of the United Nations." And I think that was just a typo or an error, because there's no such thing as peoples plurals, right? As far as I know, there's only one kind of person, the animal Homo sapiens. So I think people should be in the singular. And we saw the same typo in the book by Kofi Annan, who titled his book, "We the Peoples." But I think he was wrong. There's just one kind of person. There's not, the fact that we have nations doesn't mean that we have peoples. Okay, so the purpose in the United Nations, purpose of the United Nations was to save succeeding generations, that's you and me, from the scourge of war. And the purposes of the United Nations, number one, are to maintain international peace and security. Okay, so that's the main job. And unfortunately, the job isn't supposed to be getting done. Okay, so fast forward to now, okay? Do we have what do we think? Do we have a plausible path to a solution to war? Is it something that we actually expect to work in our lifetimes? Okay, so I recommend that you try the following experiment. You go to the UN ambassador in whatever country you're in, and you just ask them, do you think realistically that we will achieve peace in our lifetime? Okay, and I bet if you ask them, they'll say, "Oh, gee, well, you know, we're going to try our best. It's a really hard problem. We've been trying to stop war for decades. It hasn't worked. There are a lot of forces working against us. We want peace, but the other guys don't want peace." You know, they'll give you a lot of hedging. okay? They'll try to dodge the question, okay? But basically, they're pessimistic about the prospects of ending war. They don't think that even though they try, to negotiate treaties and all that stuff, they don't really think it's going to work. And they don't have a plan for how it's going to work. And I don't know about you, but I find that kind of sad that they're so pessimistic. And I think it's completely unnecessary. So the world leaders may not think peace in our lifetime is possible, but we, Fry and I, we do. Okay. And when I say peace, I don't mean just peace in the sense of absence of war. I think the UN Sustainable Development Goals, they're a pretty good description of what it means to have peace. You want to have peace, but you don't want people to be hungry. You want to have enough food. You want to have health care, education, sanitation, water. The planet should be in good shape. So these are all the things that we need to accomplish. And I firmly believe that we have a good shot at being the first, or maybe you have the first shot of in history at actually being able to accomplish all these goals. It isn't a slam dunk because we got a lot of problems, but I think it's possible. And so what we're going to do in this presentation is give you the reasons why we think peace in our lifetime is possible, and we're going to tell you how to do it. Okay, we're going to have a plan. We have a plan that we think is reasonable, and we think it can work in our lifetime. Okay, but it's not going to be easy, and maybe the detail, as we'll get into a lot of details, and maybe we're not right about all the details. We welcome ideas from you guys to see how we can do this. But we think we should be optimistic about the prospects of peace and make a plan for it to happen. Okay. But I think peace is not going to happen the way a lot of people think it is. Okay, we're not going to get some grand peace treaty where all the national governments of the world agree to have peace and they disband their armies and stuff. I think that's probably not going to happen soon. Okay, but the way we're going to have peace is by removing the fundamental causes of war. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves the question, what's the cause of war? Okay, and a lot of people have different ideas about it. I'd like to just pause for a moment and ask you, if I could go to the audience and ask you, what do you think are the causes of war? So I'll just take a minute, we won't spend too much time, but maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people just, tell me what they think the causes of war are. And if we could unmute the audience for them to do that.
I can say something. I think.
Can I answer? Hello?
Yeah, very brief. Yes.
I think it's greediness.
I think
the more people want things, the more war comes to our lives.
Okay, greed. Good.
Hello?
And Ansi?
Yes.
I think getting more power. Some countries want to
power.
Get more power.
Okay.
Yes.
Power. Okay, good.
I think it's
and lots of competition, because people want to be the best at what they are, and hence they want to compete with each other and get at the top of the whole competition.
Okay, good. Competition. Excellent.
poverty and weak leadership. Poverty.
Weak leadership. Okay, yes. Good. Good.
And poverty. As
poverty.
Well, racism. Racism.
Racism. Yep. Racism. Good.
What else? Racism is more.
I think selfishness, because sometimes people want what others have, like
jealousy,
their population or what they have. They want for them to be the best, as Timur says.
Okay, great. Okay.
Sometimes.
All right, great.
I would say inequality.
Okay.
Inequality, and yes, and lack of we're gonna say communication, because it's also
lack of communication. Yep. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So let's stop now. Let's stop. Okay. All right. Good. I think we got some good ideas now. If I could, if we can mute the audience again and then have the floor back to me. Okay. Great. Okay, so you guys mentioned a lot of things, okay? So we had greed, poverty, jealousy, inequality, racism, okay? So those are all good ideas for what are the causes of war. So now let's ask somebody who should know. Okay, and that's the founder of the United Nations, one of the founders of the United Nations, which is Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt, we call him FDR. He was, I think, one of our greatest presidents. He was president in the 30s, 1930s and 1940s, okay? And he was one of the founders, and, you know, he got us out of the Depression. He led America to victory in World War II, but he considered neither of those things to be his greatest achievement. He thought his greatest achievement was being a founder of the United Nations. So let's ask him. And what I have is a recording of a speech, but of Franklin Roosevelt, but we're not going to hear it. But the main line in his speech that I wanted you to hear is, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Okay, let me repeat that. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. First of all, let me assert that my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. Okay, so he's using very flowery language, which was common at the time, but let me break it down for you. So he says, we face our common difficulties, but so there's two kinds of fear. There's the real fear, and then there's kind of the fear in your head, which might be real or might not be real. Okay, so what he's saying is that we face our common difficulties, but they're only material things. Okay, but nature is still bountiful. Plenty is at our doorstep, but we just can't seem to make generous use of it. Okay, and then at the end he says, primarily, this is because the rulers of the exchange of mankind's goods, through their own stubbornness, their incompetence, they've admitted failure and they've advocated, they've given up. Okay, so now he was talking not about war. He was talking about the Depression at the time. And the rulers of the exchange of goods that he's talking about, those were business people. But if you substitute politicians for business people, I think everything holds. Okay, so the cause of war is we have nothing to fear but fear itself. So that gives us so it's really the fear. It's not the real fear, because nature is bountiful and we're, human beings are good at solving problems, but it's the fear in our head. That's the problem. Okay, and that I would submit all the things you guys said, racism, inequality, jealousy, greed, lust for power, all that stuff, those are all the cause of war. But I think underlying that, there's a fundamental cause, which is fear. Okay, so and I think the fundamental, and Franklin Roosevelt, he separated the fear into the real fear and then fear in your head. And I think the worst fear in your head is fear of scarcity. People feel like they won't have enough to eat. People feel they won't have a good place to live. People feel like they won't get medical care if they get sick. Okay. And then what does fear do? Fear causes us to compete with each other, okay, when we should be cooperating. Okay. And I think that is the fundamental thing. Okay, and this is good news, because if we deal with the fear, then war goes away. Okay, so there's also feedback loops, and the feedback loops are very important. So so here we have fear on the left. So we have an inside vicious cycle, okay, which is the bad stuff, and then out in red, and then we have the good stuff in blue. Okay, so we look on the right, we have fear. And what does fear cause? Well, if people are fearful with each other, they have to compete. Okay, and if the competition, maybe they compete economically and stuff, but if the competition gets too intense, then there's war. Okay, if different governments or peoples fear each other, then they compete, and then there's war. Okay, and then what does the war do? Well, the war uses up resources, and it makes the people poorer, and it causes more scarcity, which causes more fear, and we go round and round this loop. Okay, now let's look at the outer loop in blue. If there's abundance, if there's enough to go around, okay, then people feel pretty good. They have a feeling of security. They don't feel like they're going to starve or they're going to die. Okay, so now they don't feel such a need to compete with each other anymore. Okay, so they can cooperate, and then we get peace. And once we have peace, then we can have more abundance, which leads to more security and more cooperation and peace. Okay, so that's where we are. Okay, we're always on a knife edge between these two circles, a vicious circle and a virtuous circle. Okay, so this is all actually really good news, because we can, how do we break this cycle? Okay, well, once people start being fearful and they start competing and they start having war, it's really hard to break the cycle there. We haven't been able to do it. Okay, but abundance and scarcity, okay, maybe we can break the cycle there. Okay, so through most of humanity's history, we've had scarcity in one form or another. In the Stone Age, hunter-gatherers, tribal wars, there was a lot of scarcity, and people died out, and there were famines on a regular basis. Okay, now we have a lot of technology. Okay, and my work is in artificial intelligence and in human-computer interaction, and we're going. If we make the technology better, we can have abundance. Okay, and that's how we can change scarcity to abundance, and that'll result in changing fear into a feeling of security, changing competition into a feeling of cooperation, and that will lead to peace. And so that's how we're going to break the cycle. Okay, we can almost do this already, not quite, but the GDP of the world is $77 trillion. If you divide that by the 7 billion people in the world, you get about $11,000 a person. Okay, that isn't a lot, but you can think of it as $44,000 for a family of 4. Okay, which in most parts of the world will get you a pretty decent living. Okay, so in the aggregate, we almost have enough. And with robotics and artificial intelligence and personal manufacturing, we're going to talk a lot about this later. With technical means, we can increase the abundance of society. And then we have to deal with the other part, which is the fear in your head. Okay, and for that we need people. We need social organizations which are cooperative rather than competitive, so that people won't feel that fear. Okay, because remember, we have to deal with the fear that's in people's heads, even if there's not a real cause. So first, we take care of the real cause. Okay, and then we try to get people through education, through diplomacy, through social science. We try to help people feel secure. Okay, and that is the game plan for achieving peace in our lifetime. Everybody got it? Okay. All right. So what we're going to do then is give you some details in the presentation. Okay. And we're going to teach you, since this is the STEM portion of the education program, we are going to do some science and mathematics. Okay. So so we're going to go for, I don't know, another 20 minutes or so here. And then we're going to break for a little bit. And then the second part, we're going to talk about some of the technical details. So I'm going to teach you a little bit of mathematics. Some of you may know it already. There's a mathematical model called the prisoner's dilemma. And what it is it tells you about the trade-off between cooperation and competition. When should you cooperate? When should you compete? Okay, and then there's another mathematical concept called the ultimatum game, which models if people do cooperate, then how do you share the results of that cooperation? So the ultimatum game talks about that. And then we're going to talk about some evolutionary theory, a theory from a book called Non-Zero by Robert Wright that says, you know, evolution selects for positive sum, or evolution tends towards positive sum outcomes. So that's win-win outcomes instead of win-lose outcomes. Okay, and we're going to put the three of these things together. Okay, and that's going to establish the relationship between scarcity and cooperation and competition and war and peace. Okay, and then we're going to we'll talk about but we still have a problem in this. So we'll talk about how we can reorganize, and then we'll make some proposals for how we can organize the economy, how we can organize political and education and justice and other systems so that they're based on cooperation rather than competition. Okay, so now I'm just going to review. I'm going to give you in 7 slides how we're going to have peace in our lifetime. So I'm going to review. I've given you the pieces of the argument, but I'm just going to go through it one more time and just give it to you in 7 slides. So it's going to be really simple, and hopefully you'll get it. Okay, so here we go. Fasten your seatbelts. Okay, so the first argument, the first thing to say is that there's a trade-off between cooperation and competition, and then we'll look at this mathematically, okay? And I think that'll determine whether society will succeed or fail, okay? Now, let me say that you can be optimistic or you can be pessimistic about all this stuff. What's human nature? Are people good at heart, or are they always, you know, evil at heart, and they have to be tamed and disciplined and so forth? So, you know, various people have, you know, people will say things like, oh, you'll never get rid of war because we've had wars since the beginning of time, that kind of thing. But you can be optimistic or pessimistic about this. Now, Fry and I are optimistic, so we'll confess right away. And there are certain people who are hardcore pessimists. And, you know, just whatever you say, they'll always think that people will be competitive and greedy and fearful and selfish and ... And we can't really argue with them, okay, because we don't really know what human nature is. But we got to proceed on some assumptions, okay? So our assumption is going to be the optimistic assumption that people are good, but other things can get in the way. And the way to achieve a better world is to try to remove the obstacles for peace and cooperation. Okay, so that's our position. Okay, so there's a trade-off between cooperation and competition. It goes, that's going to determine whether society is going to succeed or fail. So I'm a kind of yin-yang guy. I think you need a little bit of both, but right now we have too much competition. Okay, and then there's a specific characterization called the prisoner's dilemma, mathematical principle, which I'll teach you. And the punchline of that is there are some situations where it looks like, from your own point of view, you should compete. But if you consider the general picture, you should cooperate. Okay, and so that's the prisoner's dilemma. Okay, then we're going to connect that idea to scarcity and abundance. Okay, and we'll make an argument that says scarcity promotes competition and abundance promotes cooperation, and vice versa. And I showed you that circular diagram that shows you how that happens. Okay, so now if we want a more cooperative world, then it's easy. Is all we have to do is cure scarcity. Okay, and that has seemed like an impossible thing in the history of the world, but I'm here to tell you that we have the technical means within a decade or two, within a generation, to be able to cure scarcity. Okay, there is no reason why anybody on the world, 7 billion people, 7.5 billion people, there's no reason why anyone shouldn't have enough to eat. shouldn't have a good place to live, shouldn't have access to education and healthcare. We should be able to have a justice system. So the way we're going to arrive at peace is to solve scarcity. Okay, but we got a problem, because if we want, so we have cooperation and competition, but if we look at our institutions, if we look at politics, if we look at economics, it's all developed for competition. Why? Because it's all developed for scarcity. Okay. So in politics, we have competition between candidates. We have competition between political parties. We have competition between nations. Okay. The whole system is, and you know, if you look at the laws of and the workings of the government, it's all set up to manage competition. Where's the cooperation? It doesn't really say very much about how people will cooperate, you know. So the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States, they cannot agree on anything any more than the Yankees and the Red Sox, or two sports teams, can agree on who's going to win the game, right? The structure of the situation causes them to compete, and there's no way out of it. Okay. So the question for us is, what would politics look like if it were cooperative instead of competitive? What would the economy look like if it was cooperative instead of competitive? What would education look like? Because there's a lot of competition in education also. There's grades and tests and competition for jobs and degrees and all that stuff. Okay. What would justice look like if it wasn't competitive? So right now, you know, courts are about the prosecution and the defense. And again, they can't agree on anything by design. Okay. So it's not about search for the truth or search about who committed a crime. Okay. So we need to change our institutions to be cooperative and rather than competitive. And that's the message that I want to give to politicians and diplomats. Okay, so we have a problem if capitalism, so the economic things we have now, or the economic system we have now, is capitalism, or in some cases communism. Okay, but I'm not going to distinguish between capitalism and communism, because I think they're both
Well, there's
wrong.
a huge difference. One is red and the other is red and green for...
Yes?
What?
Hello? Does somebody want to say something? Okay, I'm sorry. So in the economy, there's our economic systems are capitalism and communism. So we're going to propose a new system that we call makerism. Okay, and the key of makerism is to democratize the means of production. So here's the difference between capitalism, communism, and makerism. Okay, so in capitalism, capital owns the means of production. Okay. So we have money and we have companies and, you know, everything that happens in capitalism. I don't want to criticize it too much. It's not bad. It got us to where we are today, but it isn't the end of the road. Maybe we need to think about what comes after capitalism. Okay. In communism, the government owns the means of production. And, you know, in some ways that's good because it's better for equality, but the government becomes dictatorial and, you know, that's not good. Okay. So in makerism, everybody owns the means of production, okay? And by everybody, I don't mean what communism is saying, which is, you know, the government is the people, or the Communist Party represents the people. No, when I say everybody, I mean you and me, okay? And we all have the means of production that we own individually, or in families, or in small groups. Okay, so, and the reason we can say this is because the means of production are now changing due to technology. So it used to be that the means of productions were big giant factories and big giant companies. And if you didn't have a big giant factory or a big giant company, you couldn't produce stuff. Okay, but in the future, and this is the key point, the means of production are going to be not big factories, but little factories, small enough that you'll have one in your house. Okay, and we can see the beginnings of that right now with 3D printers. Okay, because the 3D, that's what a 3D printer is a tiny factory. Okay. Robots. When you think of a robot, you think of a big industrial robot on an assembly line, but that's not the way it's going to be. So there'll be a small robot like in the picture, okay, and everybody will have one, okay. In terms of software and in terms of our social organization, in terms of we won't have, big bureaucracies and bureaucrats, most of that coordination is going to be supplied by AI software. Okay, so the means of the production are going from things that require huge numbers of people to be doing exactly the same thing at the exact same time. Like everybody has to be on the assembly line or everybody has to buy the same product at the same time. Okay, but that's not the way it's going to be. You'll make your own products. You'll make your own software. You'll work with your friends on small projects. Okay, and then we'll put that together. Okay, that's what we mean by makerism. Okay, and there's a key advance that we don't have yet. The key advance is, well, how are people going to get all these 3D printers? How are people going to get all these robots? Okay, well, one of the neat things about a 3D printer is that it can print stuff. And the 3D printer is made out of stuff. So eventually we're going to reach a point where the 3D printer can print out all the parts that are necessary for a 3D printer. Okay. And maybe the robot can help you put together it, or maybe you'll put it together. But the idea is that once we have a printer that can print out all its own parts, then if I have a printer, but my friend Fry doesn't, then I just push the copy button on my printer and it makes him one. Okay. So at that point, everybody in the world can have one of these essentially for free. Okay. And Fry will go into more detail about how that's going to happen. Okay. So the means of production, which used to be in the hands of big organizations and big companies, will now be in the hands of individuals and small groups. Okay, so I think we even need to challenge what in the US we call democracy, okay? Because again, the political system is competitive. So we want to think about what would a cooperative political system look like, okay? And we're going to give you a proposal called reasonocracy. Okay, so in the US, we like to think we have democracy, and there are a lot of good ideas. And as Fry notes, the word democracy is a little bit ambiguous because people use it both to mean, the will of the people and the government is responsible to the people. And those are all good ideas. Okay, but then there's what Fry calls voteocracy, which is that we make all decisions by voting. There's elections. People out there has to be campaign money for the elections. And then the companies buy the candidates through campaign money, so we like to have democracy and, that we imagine the people are running the country. But in fact, what we have is a sort of voteocracy. Okay. So our alternative is called reasonocracy. And again, this is just a proposal that we're making and we want your feedback on it. This is not, we don't have all the answers. Okay. So the idea of reasonocracy is that we want to think about what government would be like if it were inspired by the social principles of the scientific community. Okay. Now you have to excuse us because this is the home team for us. We're scientists. Okay. But I think the scientific community is kind of a marvel. Okay. If you think about it, there are really not that many scientists in the world, less than 1 million, certainly. Okay. And they don't really even spend that much money compared to businessmen and politicians and stuff. But science is remarkable. Every day there's new science news of we invented something, we discovered something. It's this unending stream of good news. Whereas politics and business, in my opinion, are an unending stream of bad news. Okay, and I think that this is true because science is organized for cooperation rather than competition. So if you think about it, there's no president of science. There's no CEO of science. Science has no stockholders, no political parties. And we vote sometimes, on occasion, but really not very much. Most of our decisions are not made by voting. what they're made by is consensus, okay? Scientists don't agree on everything. If you've hung out with scientists, I hang out with scientists, you know, they have arguments all the time. They disagree about lots of stuff, but they have a process of talking to each other in a reasonable manner, of discussing things. They have a manner of testing things called the scientific method. And what scientists all agree on is the scientific method. And if we agree on the scientific method, we don't need no stinking presidents. We don't need no political parties. All the mechanisms that people, that business and politics tell us, oh, you got to have this stuff to get things done, I call bullshit. You know, science gets stuff done without a lot of these mechanisms. So what we have to do, and now not every mechanism that science has is immediately exactly transferable to politics and to economics, okay? But I think we can be inspired by it, and then we can have a good discussion about how we can make a better world with this. So I think we also need, scientifically, we also need modern processes and tools for achieving consensus. So basically, politics and business only have two ways of making decisions, okay? One of them we call, so either, you know, you get a group together and everybody can, you know, there's a discussion, everybody says what they want, then you take a vote at the end of that, okay? We call that emote and vote, okay? And then the other way you have of making decisions is you appoint somebody to be the boss, okay? And then everybody can talk to the boss, but basically the boss makes the decision. So we call that plea and decree, okay? So the only decision processes that society have are the emote and vote and plea and decree. Those are not very good, okay? How do scientists work? Okay, well, they make hypotheses. They analyze things. They do experiments. They do data analysis. They do simulations. They do derivations of principle. They apply mathematics. Okay, and then they achieve consensus. If we say there's a consensus on climate, you know, no scientist ever took a vote on it. It's just that all around the world, scientists making up their own mind with the evidence and understanding the scientific methods have come to agreement, you know, that climate change is caused by human activity, and then, you know, and we understand what to do about it. And the UN has played with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, has played a big role in developing the scientific consensus around climate change. So that's it, reasonocracy. So those are our proposals, makerism and reasonocracy. All right, so now I'm just gonna finish up by reviewing a little bit. And so we're gonna get Henry's History of the World in 2 minutes. Okay, so it started out, you know, if you go back to 100,000 years ago, it was the hunter-gatherer era, and the technology was what I call stones and bones. Okay, we didn't have much technology. We were just learning how to make tools. Okay, the economy and government, you know, I'm going to put them together, was basically tribalism. Okay. Then if you go from 100,000 years ago to maybe 10,000 years ago, you get the agricultural age. So the technology was better. We had plows and cows instead of stones and bones. Okay, and so we could grow stuff. But you had to stay put in the land rather than be nomadic. So the political systems developed into feudalism. We had kings and queens, and that's where the nations come from. You know, before that we didn't have countries. Okay, and now if we go to you know, from 100 years to today, we have industrial society, and I'm going to call the technology of industrial society jobs and mobs. So, you know, we have big factories and we need big companies to run the big factories, and, you know, democracy is in some sense ruled by the mob. So so we have that, and things. So, and if you look at the interpersonal relations, they're all three based on competition. So the result, you know, not surprisingly, is blood, sweat, and tears. Okay, well, tears aren't as bad as blood, but we can do better than this, we think. Okay, so that's the summary of history. And now, where are we? Okay, so now we're in the information age. Okay, so the technology is what I call machines and genes. So that would be AI, robotics, 3D printing, and biotech. Okay, and we're proposing the political and economic systems, makerism and reasonocracy. But instead of being based on interpersonal competition, they're going to be based on interpersonal cooperation. So we're going to get out of the blood, sweat, and tears and into peace and prosperity. That's the hope. Okay. So what I want you to do is communicate an optimistic vision for the future. Don't be fooled by all the pessimistic politicians who say, oh, we're always going to have war. Okay. Help people to understand that we're in a transition between an industrial and an information society. This is big. This is every bit as big as the transition between agriculture and industry, or between the Stone Age and agriculture. So what we have to do cooperatively is design the new society. We shouldn't be afraid to make changes or propose new ideas. And then really important is we design the transition so that nobody gets hurt. Okay, because if we don't, what's going to happen is capitalism and democracy are going to collapse. They're already collapsing. Okay, and then we're going to have a period of chaos, and a lot of people are going to lose their jobs or get hurt or have war or something. And then hopefully we would be able to do better afterwards. But we don't have, that doesn't have to happen. We don't need that. If we all understand what's going to happen, and we try to work to understand what the new systems are going to be, and we just make sure that we design a transition plan, then everything is going to be okay. That's what we think. Okay, so this has been a very, very fast tour of our ideas. Okay, if you want the full story, and I hope you do, then please go to whycan'twe.org, our website. We have a 12-minute TED Talk on there that's kind of fun that I did. And there's our book, Why Can't We All Just Get Along? And there's both a hard copy, you can order a hard copy, and then we have an ebook. But for this group, because you guys are gonna be the ones who are gonna make peace, then Fry and I are happy to offer you the book free as a gift. So if you just go to the site and you type, you hit buy this book, and then you type in the coupon code Makerism, MAKERISM, and we'll put that in the chat or in the and if you type that word, then the price will go down to $0, and you can just get the ebook for free. Okay, because we want you to read it. We want you to give us feedback, and you can reach us by email. We can all work together to achieve the new peace. Okay. We also have another invitation for you. Okay. Fry and I are going to be teaching a course. We've taught a course at MIT about these ideas for the past 2 years. 3 years. And we're going to do it again starting on the 9th of September. And of course, like every other university, we're going to remote teaching. So you can't all fit inside my classroom if we were teaching physically, but now you can, because I'm going to be teaching remote on Zoom, just like I'm doing now. So that gives us the opportunity to have you guys dial in for our course. So if you would like, so we're offering you to join our course for free if you're interested. Send me a message, RSVP to lieber@media.mit.edu, okay? And the course will take place on Monday and Wednesday afternoons on the East Coast of the United States time zone. Starting on the 9th of September and running for about 14 or 15 weeks, okay? And it will start at 3 in the afternoon, which is 15 hours US EDT, and it's 19 hours UTC. And obviously that's not gonna work for everybody's time zone, but that's it. Okay, so, oh, the beautiful colors, circles there. Oh, that's nice. Okay, all right. So what we'd like to do now is take a break for about 10 minutes. Okay, and then when we return, we would like to, so we've given you a lot to think about. So just think about it for maybe 10 minutes. And then we'll return, and then we'll have a question and answer session, because we know we've said a lot of outrageous things, and we've said a lot of things that some people might not agree with. So we're happy to get your feedback, because this is a design workshop. We're all here together to cooperate on solving the problem of world peace. So we want to hear what you think. Okay, and then we're going to spend some time presenting the technical details. We're going to go through the mathematics of cooperation and evolutionary theory. We're going to talk a little bit about psychology, how do people get motivated, because that's very important. And then we're going to talk in detail. Then I'm going to hand it over to Fry, and Fry is going to talk about the proposals of reasonocracy and makerism. And then, because we think that robotics technology and making it possible for ordinary people to do programming, not just programming experts, then Fry has a programming environment for robotics and for personal manufacturing called DDE, and he's going to demo that live for you. And again, as a gift, we're going to make that available for all you to play with. So we hope some of you will actually play with the software and help us achieve world peace in that way. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and I'll take just any immediate questions you have, and then we'll break. Okay, if there are any immediate questions from the audience, I can take them now, or you can, the assistant can unmute people.
Hello, Henry.
Hi.
How are you? How are you? How do you feel?
Good. I feel fine. I feel great.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. And I'm really delighted. I'm happy. And it's been just a couple of weeks since we met, but it has been a wonderful thing, especially getting me to start thinking in a different way, just like the students. Josh yesterday started planting some of the seeds, like about this, and I think we are up to something very concrete. So I know I'm waiting for the student to ask some few questions, but on the premises that you have, that maybe us, maybe all of us, and then we will see peace in our lifetime. If I were to ask you to pick a number in terms of the probability of us, you and I, given that I see from you that there's, this technology, if you definitely, when you resolve fear, you just said that. So just, I want to hear a number from you right now. I know in a year from now, it's going to be better, because we are going to pull together. After you finish talking, I will come out with a little bit of peace land, because I think it's strange that I was there thinking about peace land. You were thinking about, I kind of like hardware and peace and software. That's, and we are coming together, and I'm sure that we are going to end up with something even more beautiful for our world. So what's your number right now? This way,
okay.
Now I'll see where we are.
Okay, all right. So here's the answer I'll give. So when I'm working on AI, in my technical work, we get that question. The first thing when you're talking to a reporter, they say, "How many years will it be before we have artificial intelligence?" Okay, and I like the answer that was given by John McCarthy, who was the founder of artificial intelligence. He coined the word artificial intelligence. And John McCarthy, when they asked him, "How long will it be before we have AI?" he said, "Well, it'll take exactly 1.7 Einsteins and 2.3 Manhattan projects."
Oh my
And the Einsteins have to come before the Manhattan Projects.
Yes.
So that was his joking answer.
Yeah.
So I think, it'll take, 1.7 Martin Luther Kings and 2.3 Gandhis and then, I don't know, some Manhattan Project.
Okay, good.
I have a different answer for you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Try, yeah.
So when I estimate how long will it take to make these personal manufacturing stuff, or what's the workload involved, I'm guessing it's between 1,000 and 10,000 people working for a decade. Okay, so it's a finite amount of time. We do not need the whole planet to get on board with this. We don't even need 1% of the planet to get on board with it. We need a very small number of people. And my other answer is, it matters what you do. It matters what the people on this call do. It matters what we do in the next few years, because as you probably know, climate stuff is getting worse. And as the climate stuff gets worse, our ability to do anything productive will get worse. So it's up to you guys, and we're going to help.
Thank you so much. Actually, I love that. And that, I think there's a good reason we have a deal. You buy one, we get the other one for free, right? That's what I told them about Henry and Fry. I say, you buy one, you get one for free. So, okay, some of the students, the delegates. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, maybe we'll have questions after the break.
Okay, perfect.
Can I ask a question?
Okay, this. Introduce yourself, please, and where you are calling from.
I'm Luisa. I'm from Brazil, and I'm 16, and I would like to ask, what can we do to try and achieve these? For example, if I want to pursue the career of engineering, what can I do with that knowledge that I will acquire to get this?
Okay, well, I would say it's going to take a lot of different people doing a lot of different things, because all these problems are connected. So, it's hard to untangle it. So I think, it depends on what your interests are and your aptitude. If you're a technical person, going into artificial intelligence, working on making software easier to use for people, those are good things, working on robotics. If you're a mechanical engineer, you can work on that stuff. So I think those are things to do from the technical side. You can work on software to help people, decision support systems. There's a lot of stuff you can do to help people cooperate. This is above and beyond, the usual things that you could do of working on ecology or working, other things that would help promote peace. If you're but if you're a social, if you're an activist, then, it's okay to go protesting in the streets, as Josh said, but the real thing is try to solve problems. Don't try to just, solve some, get some law passed or to try to, make some small change, but really, try to design imagine what the next system will look like. What will reasonocracy and stuff, and then try to look like, and then try to do that. And we'll do that in the rest of the talks. So I think, there are a lot of different paths that you can take, but everything helps. So as long as you're, being part of the solution and not being part of the problem, then I think it's going to help.
Yeah,
I want to chime in. There's a question on chat. Will we need physicists? Absolutely. We will need material scientists. We will need chemists. We will need biologists. And we'll need social science as well. We'll need psychology and sociology. We'll need work on government. And as Henry said, pretty much all of the above.
Okay. And so we'll talk more during the break. Okay. Je souhaite le bienvenue aux étudiants francophones. Et si vous voulez poser des questions en français, je peux les traduire en anglais. Okay. So, and you can type in questions in the chat during the break, and then when we come back, we'll pick a few to answer.
Super, super. So this is, I would say, in a wonderful roller coaster, in a sense that it's been mind-blowing what has been happening since the beginning of the program. I'm telling you, even me, with my team putting this together, we had no clue. Again, this is the first time we are doing something online. So we have no expectation, nothing to compare with, but it's been so rewarding. And yes, there's a good number of people in Africa that have signed on, but because of technology cannot join us. Some are just listening and things like that. I'm finding different ways to get the message to them. So we see some of, and these are places where I used to think, oh, they ever say, oh, they have internet, they're internet, but they cannot even do a research. All they do is to get on the WhatsApp for a few seconds, and the price is unbelievable. So we've seen, this has highlight some of the area that I would consider as area of opportunities, where we can, try to see what could happen, look at ways of bringing some solutions there. But an overwhelming number of people have been impressed by. I know some even are asking us to forget about the physical summer camp and just do virtual. I said no, we cannot just exclude, but we're just considering, how to do both. Will it make sense to do next year, do the physical camp and the virtual one at the same time, or it may be a good idea to do one each? So these are some of the things that I'm debating right now, but I'm really I will say at this moment that the results are beyond my wildest dream. So thank you so much for helping make this what I say the platform from which the springboard towards Peaceland. This is a break, so anybody, everybody's on mute. Neighbor can jump in and say a few words, right? I actually, I know that Herbert was on the line at the beginning, where he was advising Henry about this concept of peoples with S. It looks like it may be a semantic thing, but he says that the Oxford, the English people define peoples as countries. I didn't even know about that myself, but he was saying that he has been, I don't know. Herbert, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, can you please clarify again? This is a place of knowledge. I like to think about this like Socrates. I imagine myself Socrates in the old days where he was sitting there, people were just debating.
Yes.
Yeah, please, can you clarify a little bit on that, please, because enlighten us.
Of course. And this is really just a side show, very small side show. First, let me say to Henry, I'm so proud that I made it this morning to be with you here. This is awesome, and I'm looking forward to the second part. I mean, it's really goosebump material.
Yeah.
I am so excited to be part of this. Awesome. So, peoples in the dictionary are what's the word in English? You can use it at your own discretion. People in singular and plural, that's the correct use. But, for example, the English, but also Native American peoples, which stands for tribes in a way, but they don't see themselves as tribes. They see themselves as a nation, the Navajo nation, for example, and they are a people. And if you put 5 of them together, you have peoples. So that's where this plural word of peoples comes from, can be used, but it's not very common.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would like to add on this. Thank you very much. I just wanted you to highlight that. But the other thing is like I see this as similar to the race, where people are talking about race, and some are saying that there's only one race, the human race. And for me, that's how I look at this, because people, I totally subscribe to to the fact that yes, we the people of the world, So, but again, it was very important to highlight that. Any other student, delegates, feel free, facilitators, all this, please. Arish, are you there? Arish? I know she was there at the beginning.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, please, jump in, please.
Sorry, I stepped away for a second. How can I help?
No, just a contribution. What do you think about, we're just kind of chatting right now, nothing special, just chatting about what we heard. So.
Yeah, I was listening to the presentation earlier. I think it's really innovative, and I think I like the idea of being founded on cooperation and sort of creating this virtuous cycle of prosperity and therefore peace. I wonder to the degree to which the way the scientific community implements their version of democracy, I wonder the degree to which that depends on individual people and their motivations and how this can scale. So of course, the manufacturing principles can scale if, as you said, 3D printers make other 3D printers and things like that. But I wonder sort of how inherent it is for some of these themes like corruption and greed and political struggles. And I wonder how inherent the tendencies underlying competition instead of cooperation are, and what that transition looks like. It's one thing to imagine sort of a new society or a pilot built on these principles. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like the kibbutz model, but it's another to think about what that transition looks like for the entire world and sort of incrementally evolving the models that people are very attached to. How do you tell somebody your money's not important anymore?
Yeah. Iris, I would say we will spend 10 times longer than you spent asking that question later in the talk as an answer. You had a million good questions in there. We will cover all of them. And if we don't, come back at the end of the reasonocracy section and we'll address the rest of them. Yeah. So, I mean, so I just like to say that, I mean, yeah, I thought, Iris, those are great questions. And, so sometimes people, when I talk about science, obviously I'm painting a very rosy picture about science. And people say, well, what about tenure battles and funding battles? Isn't that competitive? And, all that stuff. Of course, yeah. And they're right, of course. But to my way of thinking, that's what happens mostly when it's not about, that's not science. What that is the business and politics of having a job in science. You got to have, a grant, right? And
the spiral.
Yeah. And so, if it's the business and politics of science, it's like the business and politics of everything else, which is it's competitive and cutthroat and that, but yeah, just in my experience, when all the bureaucrats are out of the room, what do scientists do? Mostly what they do is they make hypotheses, they say experiments, they do all those things, that I taught. They discuss principles, they read articles, and there's no money involved. And, in a scientific discussion, the youngest beginning student and the tenured professor with a Nobel Prize, they just talk to each other and, it doesn't matter who's saying what, right? So it just, what scientists agree on is the method, the scientific method. And so that's why there's never going to be a Donald Trump of science, right? Because he would have flunked, his introductory course, by doing that, right? So, it's really the methodology rather than organization, I think, that makes the difference.
Okay, thank you. Iris, I know we didn't get it. I had a meeting with some of the speakers earlier, I think about 2 weeks ago, where I kind of talk about what you hear this word again and again, peace land. Okay, and so many of you are hearing right now. This is an opportunity. I know we're going to join back soon. And when I started writing a book many years ago. Okay, And the book was prompted me by the fact that, yes, we all want peace. We want to live in harmony, with respect in a society, and we have activists. I am one of those, okay? Social justice, civil rights, human rights activists that are willing to give their life for this, to make the world a better place. But yet, if you go and meet any one of them and tell them, okay, let's create that world, right? God gave us the power in the next 30 seconds, the next hour to create that world. Where will we start? And you see everybody scratching the head, But if you go on environmental issues, they're gonna have a sense of how that society will be, right? If you talk about civil rights issues, they will kind of have a sense of how things will be organized in that, So, and when I add to that the fact that we now have, Disney, where things are, things are possible, right? I like to say that Mickey Mouse sometimes in some areas is more real than you and I, right? Because people know her, they know how she dressed and things like that. Why not just we kind of start creating that peace land, which is something that people will see. It could be a cartoon, it could be a movie, and that, people are going to kind of have it. Oh my God, if we were to create this, then this is maybe some of the major components. So when I meet Henry and Fry, and then, after talking, I just said, let me pull that project and bring it here. So now I see us as working together. There's another friend, Matt, that who about the what if, we're changing the world about the what if, the school of the future. Just realize maybe let's just bring that project, the Peaceland project here, and then maybe, like talking about, that's why I was talking about, like having hardware and the software, maybe I'm having the hardware part, and then maybe reasonocracy and macology or whatever I call it could actually help, because I see these two things coming together. And as a result, after this camp, I'm actually trying to create a new platform that's going to be like a toward Peaceland, okay? This is a tentative title. We may change it, but towards Peaceland, where we are going to debate and the test, Henry and Christopher are saying that let's kind of have as many input as possible. Let's test these theories, and then maybe, hopefully, we are actually embarking. That's why I call it springboard toward Peaceland. So now you see where that was coming from. So thank you.
So Guy, let me maybe add another component to that, and maybe Henry and Christopher know about that. The Meta Currency Project. Has anybody heard about this? These are two guys that talking very similar to what Henry just told us. They are doing this since, I don't know, 15 years now. Art Brock is one of them, and Eric Harris Brown is the other one. So if you look at metacurrency.org, they also working towards abundance and get rid of scarcity. And they see currency as a flow, as a current of values, and not as money. And then how do you capture those flows that are beyond exchange of maybe goods? Because they say, what if, how can we capture the value to a society if a mother raises a child? It's a tremendous value, but we don't actually capture it, and also not sort of trade with it because we just take it for granted, and many other things. So that's metacurrency.org, and I think they also could contribute to your vision, Guy, a lot, because they are working on this since 15 years, and they are doing on one side what Henry does, and on the other side they're doing also the software development side of actually capturing currents of value. Just wanted to put this in here.
Oh, thank you so much, Herbert. Thank you. I hope we can have. Do you happen to know them, or by any chance, or we can just look? Oh, you are muted. You are muted, Herbert.
I'm sorry. Yes, the answer is yes, I know them. I have been working with them since almost since the beginning of their project, and it's fascinating. It's as fascinating as when I listen to Henry and Christopher. We need more of these brilliant people, and Peaceland will become a reality.
Thank you.
So Herbert, I always try to keep an open mind about these things, but in general, I'm not enthusiastic about digital currency and Bitcoin and blockchain and all that stuff. I think that's, in some sense, it's going in the wrong direction. So you use the word capture. So that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to capture, we're trying to liberate, which is the opposite of capture. Right. So I understand people are trying to make various forms of money or virtual currency and that stuff. But what I want to do is reduce dependence on money, and so I want to go in the opposite direction. So, because I don't think the world is going to be made better by having better kinds of money.
Of course. Yeah. And so, Henry, before we go too far down here, let me apologize. Based on your feedback, I did not do a good job in telling you about these two guys, obviously. So maybe we should just give them a chance to tell us where they are. And then, of course, we can make decisions. But I clearly didn't do a good job right now, so I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think, so I just want to, so one thing we're going to talk about later is intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. That is, what do you do because you just want to do it, right? And then what do you do because somebody's paying you, whether it's, dollars or Bitcoin or whatever, okay? And so the important principle is that, when people do things they want to do, they're happy, they're productive, they're creative. When people do things like people pay them to do, they don't like it. It's a job. It's working for the man, and stuff. So we want to reorient things, and I know you thinking about, inner peace, and we want to get people more in that space rather than the space of what do I have to do to earn money, or what do I have to do to get the next set of points, in some scheme. Okay. So we think that, money is, what money does is it manages scarcity and something.
Thank you. Okay. We are going to go toward the second phase. Thank you very much. And I love that we need this actual debate. And we're going to unveil Peace Land, and everyone will be open to the welcome to the table and all the contributions. And, like natural selections, we're definitely going to move forward and create it. So we are ready for the second phase, right, Christopher?
Yes. First, I want to address the questions that have been in the comments. I've got 5 issues that I want to address here. And we actually don't have a lot of time, believe it or not, even though this is a 3-hour session. Okay, first off, how can we control our thoughts in order to find peace? Be motivated to help people. Study the technologies to improve poverty and cooperation. Next, mediation is the only way to go. That can help, but if all you do is meditate, you die. Well, wait a minute. I'm not sure it was meditation or mediation. Either one, is not sufficient. What we need is sufficient solutions. So there are a solution may have many components, and you can be a proponent of a component. But I want you to say that component is part of an entire roadmap that is a solution. Don't have a component that stands by itself, right? Like electing a better president next year. That's just a component. It could help, but it's not a solution.
So, Christopher, this was my comment that you just mentioned, and it is meditation.
It is meditation. Okay, I'm sorry. So, meditation can make you calmer. It can focus your mind. There can be many things, but it's not a solution. So frame that idea into a total solution, right? That's really what I'm saying about that. Okay. I just want to move really quickly here. So technology has caused problems, new weapons, etc. That was the thrust of the issue. This is true. Tech has caused a lot of problems. Okay, one notion is we need to fight fire with fire, but Henry doesn't like that solution, so I'm going to say another thing. We can use technology to help rather than hurt. With no tech, we are naked in the jungle. And that's not a fun lifestyle. So I don't think using tech or not using tech is an option. We must use tech, but we do have to change how we use tech. And we have to be very careful about what's appropriate technology and, and what's going to hurt us. Okay. Next, we have enough food now. We grow enough food to feed everyone. Why are people hungry? The problem is distribution. Okay, so our economy does a poor job at distribution. Now, how do we solve distribution? Well, you could say we could have faster trains and airplanes to get food around and all that stuff. Those are band-aids. I say, let's not have distribution. Let's get rid of the need for distribution by making things yourself. Hyper-local manufacturing, hyper-local growing, grow in your backyard, make your own stuff, then there is no distribution. If there's no distribution, we don't have trade. If we don't have trade, we don't need money. We don't need money. We don't need banks. We don't need the 18% of the economy that's in the financial services. We don't need Wall Street. We don't need companies. We don't need a lot of things that are very inefficient about our current economy. We'll talk more about that stuff, but that's the key. Last point, we need peaceland education. My comment is absolutely. And we'll spend a little bit of time later talking about education. Education is crucial. It's a foundational institution that we need to solve. Okay, that's it for the questions in chat. Henry, I'm not sure, did you want to go with some stuff right now?
I thought, Aris wanted to say something. I don't know if you can give just quick second. Aris, what is something? Aris? Okay.
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
You want to say something?
Yeah, I just, I wanted to react to the really interesting perspective on meditation and on controlling I think the question was, how can we control our thoughts? And I thought meditation was a really insightful answer. And I think it speaks to the need to sort of connect at the individual level with values and a sense of character and our internal priorities, and move away from the model that you talked about sort of configuring our lives and our priorities around quote unquote chasing points. So I thought that was really, really insightful and sort of is worth underscoring, but I know we have a lot of material to get to, so I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Henry, back to you.
Okay, so what I'd like to do very quickly is just, since to give you some technical detail, I'd like to just go very, very quickly, if it's okay with Fry, through the prisoner's dilemma and some of the mathematics and biology. We can't do it all, but I'll just get, the idea is to give you a taste, and then you can, you don't have to understand everything, but then you can read it in the book. So, Fry, does that sound just prisoner's dilemma, and then I hand it to you for the rest?
Go.
Okay. All right. All right. Now I need to get back my screen. Okay, tell me what you guys are seeing. Are you seeing my slides full screen? Yeah, okay, great. Hold on.
War, tragedy of commons, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to get back to the beginning here. This came up in the middle. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is something called the prisoner's dilemma. And so there's a little story behind it. You have to imagine it. So you imagine that we have two suspects in a crime, Bonnie and Clyde. Okay, and they're captured by the police. Okay, and the cops say to them, "I'm going to make you a deal." So there's two possible suspects, and they're separated, and they're each interviewed by cops. Okay, and the cops say, if you confess to the crime, then we're going to put you in jail. Okay, but if you say that your partner did the crime, then we'll get you on a lesser charge, like possession of weapons or something like that. And if you both rat out each other, you get an intermediate sentence. Okay. If you both stay silent, you both get a slap on the wrist. Okay. So we're going to give you a set of conditions that you have to do. And what you have to decide is, should I accuse my partner? Okay, so you have a choice between cooperation and competition. But if you choose to accuse your partner, then you get a lesser sentence. Okay, and under certain so here we have Bonnie. She could either stay silent. If they both stay silent, Bonnie and Clyde both stay silent, then they both get only a small sentence. Okay. Okay. If Bonnie betrays Clyde, then Clyde goes to jail and Bonnie goes away for free. Okay. So we call now we're looking at, what should Bonnie do? Should she betray Clyde or should she stay silent? Okay, so if we imagine that Clyde is silent, so that's the same in both cases. So here we have either Bonnie stays silent and Bonnie betrays him. So in the case that Bonnie stays silent, she gets 1 year. Okay, in the case that Bonnie betrays Clyde, then she goes away free. Okay, so that's better. So that's called the temptation. She's tempted to accuse her partner. Okay. So now, if we say again, so if we look at, and so there's the reward and the temptation. Okay. So if Bonnie stays silent and Claude stays silent, then they both do pretty well. Okay. But if Bonnie always takes the risk that Clyde might betray her rather. Okay. So if we look at those two cases, I'm sorry. So here, Clyde betrays her. So what should she do in the case that Clyde betrays her? Okay, again, she's faced with the same choice. And we would see that 3 years is better than 5 years. So in both cases, Bonnie does better if she accuses Clyde. Okay, but if we look at all 4 cases, we see that Bonnie and Clyde are both faced with the exact same choice. So if Bonnie's choice from her point of view is the better thing is to betray Clyde, and Clyde also betrays Bonnie, then they both betray each other. Okay, and then we get the punishment case, which is this case, which is kind of too bad, because if they both stayed silent, then they could have done the best for the team. Okay, so that's the prisoner's dilemma. Okay, and so we have these 4 cases: the temptation, the reward, the punishment, and what we call the sucker's loss. That's if you stay silent and the other partner betrays you. Okay, so if we have the case that the temptation is greater than the reward, is greater than the punishment, is greater than the sucker's loss, then we have what's called the prisoner's dilemma. So it's called the traps inequality, because it traps you. It tempts you into competing when in fact you should be cooperating. So that's the mathematical principle of the prisoner's dilemma. So does this happen in the real world? Sure it does. Let's look at war. Okay, so in war, we always have a choice. We could either fight or not fight. Okay, and if we don't fight, though, we take the risk that somebody's going to attack us. So if nobody fights, then we have peace and prosperity. Okay, but since people are worried about being defeated, military defeat, okay, then they choose to attack. They choose to fight. Okay, then the result is mutually assured destruction. Okay, and that happened we almost had nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis because of that. Okay, it also happens in the economy. So every company has the choice between making a good value product or cheating their customers. If they cheat their customers, they make more money. But if everybody makes a good value product, then the customers win and maybe the company wins too. Okay, but the problem is there's always the temptation to cheat, to compete with your customers. Okay. In advertising, we have two companies, Coke and Pepsi, and they have lots of ads. Okay. Why? Because every year the Coke and Pepsi sell the same amount of soda. So the ads don't do any good. Okay. The advertising budget of Coke and Pepsi is equivalent to the entire sum of money the United States spends on science. Well, that's a huge waste of money. So why do companies spend money in cases where it doesn't actually do them any good? Because of the prisoner's dilemma. They're tempted to do something they shouldn't do. Okay. Pollution. If a company pollutes, maybe they'll make more money or they'll sell polluting products. Okay. But if everybody chooses not to pollute, then we have a sustainable environment. Okay. So this is the tragedy of what keeps happening in a society is everybody's tempted to compete when they should be cooperating. Even racism and sexism are explainable by this framework, and we'll leave it as an exercise to the reader. You can see it in the book how this happens. So you have a majority and a minority, and should the majority cooperate or compete with the majority? But if the majority always competes with each other and then they don't compete with the minority, then you get racism and sexism. Okay. And so I'm going to skip over a lot of this stuff, but we connect it to the issue of scarcity versus abundance. Okay, so on the right you see the so if we have near scarcity, so if you get the temptation, which is the largest return, then you live, otherwise you die if there's scarcity. Okay, so this situation encourages competition. Okay, and as we get more and more resources, so here the temptation and the reward are sufficient, but the punishment and succor's loss will cause you to die. So that favors a mix of competition and cooperation. Okay, and finally, if we have near abundance, then it's only the worst case that's going to cause you to die. And so that is much, much more conducive to cooperation. So again, we explain this all in the book, but that's the basic idea. We get tempted to compete rather than cooperate, but if everybody cooperates, then we get the best solution for everybody. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And so that's the connection between competition and scarcity. And now I want to hand it over to Fry. So first I'll take any questions just on the prisoner's dilemma, and then we'll hand it over to Fry. Okay, and I need to get out of shared screen sharing. So could you bounce me out of the screen share? Because I don't seem to be able to get out of the screen share here. Okay, question from Simar.
So hello, my name is Simar Mohanty and I'm from India. So I had a question related to the first phase of the session. So my question was that the world should come together in the face of this pandemic, but the government and the government systems, they are very, very stressed. And we see conflicts brewing up in different parts of the world. As an expert on AI, what steps, in your opinion, should governments take using AI to mitigate the situation and shift the focus on surviving the pandemic and champion the cause of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, thank you, Samar. That's an excellent question. And in the pandemic, we've seen extraordinary examples of cooperation, and then we've seen tragic examples of competition. Every AI scientist in the world right now is thinking about how to help with the pandemic, including myself. Okay, and so there are people working on AI systems for medical diagnosis. There are people working on modeling the spread of the disease. Stuff. And the key, but politicians are worried about, should the virus be in this country or that country, or should this state buy protective equipment or that state buy protective equipment? So the politicians are all screwing it up. they should listen to the scientists because the scientists are cooperating and the politicians are screwing it up. So that's the thing, is that, everybody should listen to the scientists. We have this under control. It's not that different than a lot of pandemics in the past that have threatened the world. And we had more, and the key is, as always, the key is cooperation. If we cooperate, we win. If we compete, we lose. That's all there is to it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maria. Could you ask your question, Maria? Maria Camila Malhardi.
Hi, I was just thinking, how this would work in a large
Please introduce yourself first and where you are calling from. You can also give your age if you want.
My name is Maria Camila. I'm from Brazil and I'm 15.
Okay.
And you said that one of the ways that we would, prosper would be through technology. But how does it work in poor areas where we don't have much technology and we would rely on external facts to get it, from government or, other companies, and how we would have access to it to produce our own things?
So I think it is more difficult for places in the world that have fewer resources. Okay, but there are two resources we're never going to run out of, and there are two resources that are in short supply nowhere in the world that we got plenty of, and I think this is access to everybody. And the two resources are bits, which is software, okay, and love. There's no shortage of love. We can make more love whenever we want it, okay? So if we run all our economy on bits, that is, we go production with, digital, with software, and we run the economy on software, then that's reproducible at no cost. And even in the poorest countries of the world now, the internet is not everybody has the internet yet, but a lot, in the past decade, a lot more people have gotten it. The internet is not that expensive. Software is not that expensive. Computers and phones are not that expensive. So as time goes on, we'll get those technologies even to the poorest places in the world. Okay. And the other thing is love. So, if we organize our social systems based on cooperation rather than competition, that anybody can do anywhere in the world. So without much resources. So that's my hope, is that the two resources that really that we need are bits, software, and love. And that's accessible to everybody. And just as, we made the internet now has worldwide reach, I think these systems are also going to have worldwide reach. That's my hope.
Okay, I'm going to take a couple of questions from the chat and then move into the bulk of my talk. First, how can students help? Work on education itself. Go meta. Read our book on education. Teach yourself. And come to our MIT class in the fall. Okay, next, how can we get out of the competitive mindset? This is a big deal. This is a really big deal, insightful question. I think there's really only one way: give people economic security. Once they are secure, once you are confident that you can live a reasonable lifestyle for the rest of your life and all your friends and family can do the same, now you're free. You're free from having to have a job, from having to worry about the mortgage or eating or all that stuff. And your natural human empathy will take over. That's true for 90% of the people, right? They have empathy. Personal relations become more important. Okay, I'm ready to start. So Henry and I spent about 3 years writing this book. It was started about 5 years ago. And for the last 3 years, we've taught a class at MIT on this subject. MIT has a of weird people in it. We are among the weirdest. Now, we've heard a lot of criticism of our ideas. Mostly that comes initially when people don't understand the depth of our ideas, but usually on further examinations, the objections are not showstoppers. I want to address human nature. A common critique people will say, human nature, people are just bad, they like to fight, etc. Okay, what is human nature? Human nature is behavior that is independent of the environment. Means no matter what happens in the external world, you're always going to be a bad guy, right? But how can we tell whether something is human nature or not? If there is a characteristic of the environment that is constant throughout, that everybody has it, now you look all over the world and you say, oh, everybody in the world behaves this way. Well, maybe they behave that way because they all live in the same environment, right? But what if we could change some crucial element of the environment that is causing us to behave badly? Then perhaps we could get beyond what people think is human nature that people like to fight, right? So what might that constant be? That constant is scarcity. Throughout human history, there's always been scarcity. Yes, we do have millionaires and billionaires, right? But a lot of that request for power is really a mental illness. And it's not true. It's true for 5% of people, right? A minority, right? So we believe that if people fundamentally have a decent lifestyle, I'm not talking about yachts and owning hotels and mansions, all that stuff. I'm talking about a safe, warm house, enough food, ability to communicate with others, some self-respect. I think we will solve a lot of the problems that people think are caused by human nature. And you might observe, most people, most of the time, are not fighting. So why can't we increase that percentage to, all the people or very close to all of them? Okay. Now, we live in an environment, a government environment and an economic environment. The social structures of our environment select fighters as our leaders. Democracy and most government processes selects for warmongers. Okay, that is the process that we have. That's the fundamental process that we've got in our government. So wars caused by a small minority of people, right? We need a government that doesn't select for warmongers. We need an economy that doesn't select for warmongers. There's the whole military-industrial complex, right? That's what that's all about. Our economy selects for power-hungry individuals. We, the people, cede our individual power to these people that shouldn't be leaders. I would say anybody who wants to be a president of a country should be disqualified from being the president of the country. Because in order to be a president, it's very difficult and you got to have a lot of drive for it. And then that's going to put in place a person, exactly the kind of people that you don't want as a president. The presidents, the CEOs of the world are not representative of humans. Yet when we talk about human nature and stuff, what do we think of as human nature? It's coming from the leaders. That's where the press is coming from. They're not representative. Okay, another comment from the chat that we had earlier. Negotiation contributes to international peace. All right, this is better than nothing. It contributes. But we don't need contributions. We need solutions. I'll call this, negotiation contributes to international peace. I'll call this the old UN method for achieving peace. Who are the negotiators? They're the status quo. they want to preserve the status quo. The president of a country appoints the ambassadors to the UN. What does the president want? The president wants to maintain their own power. So they appoint people to the UN that will hopefully help that president in the international community use other countries to help them maintain their power. This is not a recipe for success. Okay, but that was like the old, right? Can we have new government structures and economy that don't promote people that desire power? Is it possible? Can we have a new UN method for achieving peace? Henry and I think so. That's what we're going to talk about. Okay. You have a question from Marie Claude. Well, okay, go ahead. Okay, looks like that question went away. We've got a lot to say here, right?
Yes, please, yes.
So why don't people do the right thing? Okay, one is ignorance. They just don't know the facts. They don't know what to do, right? So that's where education comes in, right? We've got to have better education, no matter what we do. We got, I don't know.
Yeah, please, Rodrigo, please mute everybody. Please, go ahead. They can send questions directly in the chat room. Thank you.
Okay. Another reason we have people don't do the right thing is stupidity. They don't have they're incapable of reasoning. That's a more difficult problem to fix, but we will talk about a language for reasoning in, right? We don't have good education on reasoning. Okay, another reason people don't do the right thing, they don't have shared values. They don't really want the same things. What we believe is that at the highest levels, many people want the same thing. They want to be happy, they want to be healthy, they want their friends and family to have good lifestyles. So we often do have shared values at the very highest levels, but when it gets down into the lowest levels, everybody's scrambling for money for themselves, and that causes conflict. Okay, now another reason we don't do the right thing is we just don't have good solutions. Right now, when you don't have good solutions, what happens? People fight over the Band-Aid solutions. They fight over things that don't really matter that much. What you need to identify when you're in a problem space is you look at the solution cards on the table and you say, are any of these cards sufficient to solve the problem? Many times the answer is no. Many times the best card on the table is not good enough. When the best card on the table is not good enough, it's time to innovate. And innovate does not mean, oh, it has to come from magic in the ether, all that stuff. We can teach how to innovate. The first thing is to know what an innovation looks like. And we have a whole section in the book talking about innovation, right? Now, imagine we have several good solutions, several reasonable solutions. How do we pick among them? To the first approximation, doesn't matter. If all of them are good, if all of them are going to fundamentally solve the problem, roll the dice, flip a coin, right? It's good if we pick the best one, but doesn't so much matter. Okay, how do we select it? How do we know whether a solution is good or not? We have to meet the needs of all the players. We have to examine the motivations of the individuals and figure out what is going to help them. And if those people are sick, if they are mentally ill, we need to find ways to help them. One of the technologies we need a lot more is psychology. So if any of you are psychologists or sociologists, you are going to be needed. Continue studying those fields. They're important. Another characteristic of a solution is it needs to scale. It needs to scale to worldwide. If you buy an electric car, that's not going to help much. if everybody drives an electric car, that could help more. So think about the scale of things, not just the small things that won't work. Okay, now I want to move into what is the definition of government. Government is a decision-making process for a whole population. Okay, first thing is government is a process. It's not buildings, it's not politicians, it's not even really constitutions, although constitutions can describe a process, right? But usually a constitution isn't a complete description, right? The US in a constitution, we didn't have term limits in the Constitution up until after FDR, right? So now we have them, right? But okay. Now, you might say, well, government is execution. Government is getting stuff done. It's fighting wars. It's collecting taxes, all this stuff. Well, that's not the essential role of government. Essential role of government is making decisions. We can outsource execution. But you might keep in mind, much of execution is making increasingly smaller decisions. So it's really about making the decisions. That's the key. Okay, now there's a strong relationship between government and the economy. What I would say is the economy controls government. Now, you may be aware that under capitalism, if we have free, unfettered capitalism, it can't work, right? If every person for themselves or every company for themselves, what would happen? Companies would hire armies and they go shoot their competitors, right? That's not going to work. Right? So we have government to theoretically keep the companies down from killing each other, right? But what tends to happen is that government is used as a coalescing force to keep the status quo in power, to keep the big companies being big companies, right? Doesn't always succeed in that, right? But that's kind of the process. That's the process of K Street in DC. That's the process of how does a bill get written? It gets written by lobbyists. Who are the lobbyists? The lobbyists are an industry that was going to benefit from better tax laws for them or something. That's how, at least in the United States, that's how it happens. All right. What does a good government look like? A good government makes optimal decisions for the governed. The greatest good for the greatest number with minority rights, right? We want to increase the good to the people. We need minority rights because everyone's a minority. I think all you guys understand this, right? So to have a good government, what do we need at the very least? We need two things. We need good people. We need people that are motivated to help the citizens. And we need a good process by which those representatives can make decisions. If you take a bunch of good people and put them in the room, let's say you guys put them in a room, you won't come out with good decisions. The reason is because you don't have a good process, and you don't have a good process because it's not taught to you. What's taught to you is emote and vote, as Henry says, or plea and decree, right? These are not good processes for making decisions. They just don't work that well. So we need to teach process. Okay. Now, well, I'm gonna talk a lot about the United States because it's a big country and I'm most familiar with it. But I think many of these lessons will apply to other countries. The United States government, U.S. democracy, has neither good people nor a good process. You need both of those. We don't have either one, right? It selects the wrong people, and almost nobody knows what a good process would be. There's exceptions. There are good people. Often those people get corrupted by power, and there are some moves toward better processes, but usually they're band-aids. They're not significant to, the most common better processes, select a better person next time if you don't like that. The problem is the better people, I can just tell you in this current 2020 US election, I have seen no candidate running from any party that has what I would call solutions. None. They don't know what a solution even looks like. This is like the most progressive candidates, you know, and I've actually talked to a bunch of them, so I'm pretty confident about this. They don't have problems for war, poverty, climate change, corruption, or healthcare, right? Obamacare, big deal, not a solution. We'll talk about solutions later, okay? Now, Henry talked about FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. You know, the only thing we have is fear yourself. Okay, that's good. You know, it's a nice soundbite. It's true. It's not actionable. What are you going to do with a comment like that? Oh, gee, I'm going to try to be unafraid. Well, not too helpful. Okay. Winston Churchill, 1947, said, democracy is the worst form of government except for all others. Okay. Now, many people believe this to be true. I dislike this quote because it implies that we can't have a good government. Winston Churchill was not an innovator. He was a status quo player. He wasn't rocking the boat here. He said, let's keep democracy. I can win under democracy. It's great for me. We need inventors. When the cards on the table are not sufficient to solve the problem, invent. All right. Another quote, democracy has the power to unite. I don't know where I got this from, right? But it's indicative. Many people believe this true. I think this is analogous to saying guns have the power to end war. Okay? It's sort of possible in theory, but more likely is to cause disunity. What do you have in democracy? You have political parties. What are political parties doing? They're competing with each other, right? Not a recipe for cooperation. You know, democracies tend to divide people, not unite them. Okay. What's one of our biggest problems? One of our biggest problems in the world is people believe that democracy is the only kind of government to have, right? They say, oh, communism, that was terrible. That caused all this authoritarian, blah, blah, blah. Socialism, well, that doesn't really work, and you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, so they go through the whole list and they say democracy is the best. Democracy might be the best of what most people think is on the table, but it's not good enough. And we need to recognize when the best is not good enough. So having these myths of what are good solutions to problems that in fact are not sufficient solutions preclude us from change. They preclude us from improvement because you want to fix democracy? Go campaign for your favorite candidate, run for office yourself, propose new bills, that kind of stuff, right? So it diffuses the energy for change into things that aren't going to make a real change. And therefore we dissipate the power for change. And that if there's any characteristic that democracy is great at, democracy is great at preserving itself. Okay, we see and worldwide over the last dozen or so years, there's been a general trend toward a lack of freedom, less freedom in the world, more authoritarian governments. You know, and it goes up and down. You know, some government is good or some good work, but there's been a trend by an organization called Freedom House that does a general survey of the world and has done one for, I don't know, 25 years or something. Okay. Can we fix democracy, right? How about term limits for Congress? Well, gee, good idea. I think it would be help. I like term limits, you know, but it's a Band-Aid. You know, what's going to happen? We're going to have the people come out of Congress and then they'll just go into their lobbying jobs on K Street, you know. Minor changes like no filibusters. We're not solving the fundamental motivations of the people in power, right? Campaign finance reform. Okay, is that a good idea? Yeah, that's a good idea, but we're still going to have campaigns, and you're not going to be able to get rid of all the money. If you were able to get rid of the money in US democracy, we would no longer have democracy by definition. Money is part of it's an integral part of democracy. Okay, gerrymandering, big problem in the United States. I hope most of you know what it is. It's cutting up divisions and stuff. Maybe we could solve gerrymandering, although nobody in power wants to solve gerrymandering because they're in power because they're in power. They like the gerrymander. They're in. So are they going to vote against the process that got them in office? No. Okay. And there are some tricks that we can do with proportional representatives to make democracy better. And they would improve things, but fundamentally, they're band-aids on it. We need to solve the problem. We don't need contributions. We don't need little fixes. We don't need to make it 10 or 20 or 50% better. We need to make it 1,000% better. Okay, now, what's a president? A president, theoretically, well, what's a senator? A senator represents their own state, right? A House of Representatives, they represent their own city. We don't need people that represent their own cities. We need people that represent the whole country or the whole world, right? Theoretically, the UN is doing that. We want leaders who take into account everyone, all 7 billion of us, not just the people who elected you, not just your family or, your friends, right? Now, presidents theoretically represent the whole country, right? In theory, right? But what happens for presidents? They attract people that are power hungry. And if you're not power hungry, you're not going to be president because it's a real pain in the butt to be president. You got to go through a lot of strife to do it, right? Okay. So all that stuff, all those other solutions, fixing gerrymandering, making voting fairer, all this stuff, all band-aids. They can make it 10% better, 20% better. We need something much better. Communism had some good ideas. In practice, led to dictatorships. Cuba, very interesting country, great culture, great music. I like a bunch of things about Cuba. After 60 years, they've still got poverty. So didn't work out so well. Although healthcare, I think they've made some innovations on that. So I like it. I'm not to say there aren't good ideas coming out of there. Scandinavia, also interesting countries doing well. We've seen how Sweden has treated the pandemic, hasn't worked out so well, right? So we like a bunch of ideas from socialism, particularly from Scandinavia, and we think it's good to pay attention to those guys. We think we need to do more. Okay, I'm going to characterize governments in just 2 categories. This is characterizing governments, how they make decisions, right? The key way to characterize a government. What is the process for decision making? So there's 2 basic processes used for making decisions in government. The first one is power. Power wins. Now, you might say, well, democracy, that's like sort of people power, right? Yeah, it is kind of people power. And you tally up all the votes of the people, right? But what does a vote carry? A vote carries just who you're going to vote for. It doesn't say why you're voting for that person. What if circumstances change and that person is no longer good? What if that person told you some campaign promises and they lied? Imagine that happening in a democracy, right? So democracy, like dictatorships, is a power-based mechanism for making decisions. Okay, what's the second kind of government? The second kind is a reason-based government. We don't have examples of reason-based governments yet. That's what we're going to talk about. Okay, another characteristic of, well, you're here if you study U.S. democracy. They say, oh, we need to have 3 branches of government, legislative, judicial, and executive, right? Because we need to balance the power between these different governments. if you have to balance power, you've already lost. That means you have a power-based government, right? Another thing is we have two political parties. Oh, we have to balance the power between one political party and the other. If one gets out of hand, the other will step in. We're balancing power. We're playing with the wrong tool for making decisions. Okay. Let's see. Another thing about voting is voters really don't have enough time to make good decisions. I mean, they've got a job, you know, they've got family, they got enough stuff to do, right? So a voter, most voters at best, they're superficial decision makers. Our problems that can be solved, but that are easy by superficial, you know, observation of reality have already been solved. Those aren't the problems. The problems are the complex ones. The complex ones need people who spend a lot of time thinking about the problems, discussing them with each other, and reasoning with each other through a good process, right? Now, we don't have that. In Congress, most of a congressperson's time is spent getting re-elected. They're not there. So in theory, a representative could spend their whole time thinking about the problems. In practice, they don't, because the process selects for people that want to be in government. They want to be in a powerful position. So their number one goal, get reelected. Okay. So power attracts power. Power causes power. Power corrupts. Power is inherently selfish, so it can't represent people well. All right, so what are our two basic strategies? Personal manufacturing to solve scarcity and having a better technology for cooperation, which will ultimately increase productivity. Okay, and that's what we're talking about for reasonocracy. Okay, so what do we need? We need good people. What does that preclude? That means we need no leaders in government. No leaders in government. We need no president in government. We need minimal opportunities for corruption, including elections, which are inherently prone to corruption, right? I observe, I'm not sure this is really true, but I bet most elections throughout the world, national elections, some side is accusing the other side of corruption or tampering with the votes or counting them incorrectly or jailing the opposition or shutting down polls or that kind of thing, right? So elections, it's not just a few elections that have problems, it's most elections, I think. I don't really have the statistics on that, but I'm giving, okay. And the elections guarantee that you will have a non-representative government. They won't be average people. What do elections select for? They select for people that can win elections. And those are not average people. It's tough. Okay. So we need a good process once we get the good people. And that's what we're gonna start talking about. Okay. So how do we get to getting good people? Well, one solution, it's not a great solution, but it's a possibility, is just randomly pick people. Okay. Now, in the US, we have jury duties, right? We have juries and they go in court cases, they're randomly selected, right? So what does random selection get you? It gets you guaranteed representative government. Okay, that's the first thing. It also gets very few psychopaths. There's only a few percent of psychopaths. So we'd only get a few percent instead of a much larger percent the government selects for, right? Now, you might say, if we randomly select people, then we're going to get this bonehead down the street that I wouldn't trust with my cat, let alone the government, right? That's true. That's going to happen, right? But it'll be, on average, we're going to get people of average intelligence. And you might say, well, we don't want average intelligence. We want super smart people. But look at what democracy selects for. It selects for smart people that are evil, that don't want the things that we want. You'd rather have an average person in charge than an evil genius person in charge. Okay? Now, what do we do with those people? You can't just throw them in a room and say, make good decisions, because even if they're well motivated, they don't have a good process. So the process of reasonocracy is to select people at random with a few restrictions. You know, you got to be maybe 18 years old, maybe you know a little bit of math, and you know the language that you know the government is run in. You know, and not too many other restrictions, because we don't want to. We want to guarantee a representative part, right? And then we put them to school. We put them in school for a year or two. And I think of the government should be more like a university campus. And you go to talks and you listen to Henry and I, you know, talk about this stuff. Maybe this video will be in a reasonocracy class someday, right? And you teach them how to cooperate with each other through process. You teach them about fundamental economics. And I don't mean money. I don't mean the Fed and interest rates and all that stuff. I mean, how do you produce wealth and how do you distribute wealth? Okay, so now that government will get expert opinions. They'll have testimony and they'll bring in scientists. You know, you'll bring in, you know, Dr. Fauci, you know, who understands diseases, and we'll bring in, you know, expertise we need, and they'll be listened to carefully, and we'll have a process for filtering their information. So we're not excluding expertise, and we also want to have a process by which we can get good ideas from the entire population. And that's going to be tricky. But we believe there are mechanisms that we can filter up ideas, even though there's lots of them. So there's a lot of details about that. We don't have a lot of time here, but let me just talk just very briefly about a program Henry and I have worked on. It's called Justify. It's about how to help people make good decisions. So one of the problems in making good decisions is they're too darn complex. So Justify is kind of like a spreadsheet to add up rationale for decisions. So it's a little bit of AI, but not too much. It does things like how many reasons for candidate A do we have, and how many reasons against candidate A do we have? And do we have reasons against other reasons, and reasons against the reasons that are against the reasons, or support for reasons, or that kind of thing? It starts getting very complicated. If we just have a discussion with, you know, 5 people for an hour, you're going to generate like 1,000 ideas. And then at the end, how do you add up all this stuff? That's what Justify is. It's a way to collect rationale, to collect the key decisions that need to be made, to collect the candidate answers, and to weigh the candidates against each other with reasoning. It's a complicated program, but it's something that can be taught probably a few months within reasonocracy. We could teach people how to use it, teach them how to cooperate, and then we get out of this mode of, you know, shouting, or whoever speaks first or speaks last, or whatever I can remember. You know, get rid of all that stuff, right? Get down to a reason-based decision-making process. Okay, now, Henry talked a bit about science and science process, and scientists do tend to reason more, and that's a good thing, but often even the scientific process is not as definitive as it really needs to be. You know, usually scientists answer a question like, is this vaccine ready to go to the public, or do we need more trials and tests, right? They don't decide, are we going to give $1.2 billion to solar cells this week, right? It's not the normal kind of stuff that you decide. So we need processes that can be more definitive and deal with day-to-day needs of allocation of resources. Because at the end of the day, government is about allocating resources. Those are the decisions it makes, all right? So now we have intentional communities.
Такая лекция классная. Хотите послушать?
Rodriguez, please mute everybody.
I know what that is. Okay, so there's a general process called consensus, and hopefully you've heard it. The core of consensus means that we address the needs of everyone, right? So everyone is happy with the solution. Okay, that's good because that covers minority rights with a big hammer, right? So consensus has a lot of good things in it, but consensus as practiced, as I have seen practiced in the United States, I've been to a lot of meetings in consensus, it's not a very cut and dried process, right? A lot of it has to do with how the facilitator is operating. It's poor at handling complexity. And also, it tends to select for solutions where everybody thinks it's a good idea. Okay, so let's imagine a solution like this. It's pretty good. Nobody has any objections to it, right? Versus a solution that says 9 out of 10 people say, this is great. This is fantastic. It's really going to change the world. And 1 or 2 people say, no, I don't think it's a good idea, right? Which one would you pick? Consensus picks the one where nobody objects. And then we tend not to get innovation with consensus, right? And if we don't have innovation, essentially we die. Let's say a little bit more about that. Okay. Okay, so we need a more definitive process. We need to manage complexity. And justify is a way to digitize rationale. Every rationale is like a line. You know, why do we need solar cells? Because they don't have pollution, right? They don't have the corruption of big power companies, right? But maybe they're bad because they use some bad chemical in them. Okay, do we need to innovate? Do we need to make a new solar cell that doesn't have that bad chemical? Maybe. Okay, what's our decision? We're going to allocate $10 million to this solar cell experts in universities that can figure out how to make solar cells without toxic chemicals, right? That's the kind of thing that a reasonocracy would do. All right, what does the government really look like? Let's say we have, you know, roughly a Congress of 500 people, right? Let's say it has, I don't know, 30 to 50 committees. We have each representative is on several committees. Maybe I like the number 3 because we want to have people be on different committees so that they talk to each other. And the committees are similar to what we've got now, you know, transportation, energy, agriculture, you know, those kind of committees, right? We want to get people in that are thinking about the problems carefully. Who do we want on the makeup of those committees? Well, we want some people that self-identify that they're interested in agriculture. But we also want some people that are not interested in agriculture, because we don't want an agricultural committee to say, let's give all the money to agriculture. And then the energy committee says, let's give all the money to energy. No. We want some naysayers on those committees to say, oh, rather more important than giving more money to agriculture is to solving this problem with energy. And let them, we've got to balance out that situation. Okay. Let's see. I want to pause here for a second. Henry, do you want to say anything about government right now?
No, I just want to time check for you. We have a half hour left. So just
shoot. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We got to rush on to the economy, right? I don't believe that we can change government significantly without changing the economy, because the economy controls government, right? Money controls who gets elected, right? So in capitalism, we've got the general equation of capitalism: profit equals revenue minus cost of goods sold. So profit is what people seek profit, right? And you get a profit by taking in a bunch of money, spending some of that money for the products that you're selling, and then take the rest as profit. If you're more profitable, you win as a company, you know, you can hire more employees, blah, 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 right? Okay, so the profit drives capitalism. The easiest way to increase the profit in a company is to reduce the cost of goods sold. It's harder to increase revenue. So many business leaders will try to reduce that cost, okay? So most of the cost in a company is labor. It's for salaries for its employees, right? But if we cut people, we cut the production of the product, and so that will ultimately cut our revenue, unless we can cut people and replace them with robots, with automation. Now, if an automation is cheaper than a person, then it will be adopted by companies under capitalism because it will increase their profits. So automation is part of the problem. We're proposing automation as a solution, but it's part of the problem, right? Okay, so what happens if I believe most people are going to become unemployed? Why? Because people only have two advantages over robots. They're more dexterous physically, right? And they're smarter, right? But robots are getting very dexterous. I work at a company that has a very precise robot, right? Much more precise than people. It's not doesn't replace them, but for many tasks it will be better. On the intelligence side, people are really smart, and we're a long way from true, human intelligence. But most of the knowledge that you need to get a specific job done is not most of your intelligence. It's a small percent of your intelligence. So humans will be replaced by robots in general for most tasks, right? That means human doesn't have a job. They don't have a paycheck. They don't have a paycheck. They can't buy anything. They can't buy anything. The company selling the goods will go out of business. Okay? If they don't have an income, they don't have any income taxes. They can't buy anything. There's no sales taxes, right? Or even import taxes because they aren't buying. So government will go out of business. So we are on a financially unsustainable process right now. Capitalisms will drive towards automation. Automation because of profit. Automation will put people out of work. And then they won't be able to buy stuff, and then the companies themselves will fall apart, right? We're unsustainable. I think all this is not specific to the US, okay? Now, most economists, including economists at the MIT Business School, will tell you, we will retrain people to new jobs. They'll learn computer programming or ultrasound technician or this new stuff. We'll invent new jobs, right? But I think that's coming to an end as robots become more and more capable. I don't think the trend that we've been able to do up till now since the Industrial Revolution of retraining people is going to keep happening. Okay, the other possible solution is universal basic income, and that's a possibility. We tax the companies heavily, right? And then we give that money out to the people. People don't have jobs, and then they just use the money to buy stuff. Okay, that can work. It's the second best solution. The problem is government doesn't like to tax people because they think they won't get elected if they tax people. That's one of the problems. And second of all, the rich are unlikely to give up a large percentage of their wealth just so people can have good lifestyles. Okay, so what's our solution to this? Our solution is have personal factories. It's to be able to make things, with a factory that you have in your house. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about a cubic meter, something like that, right? And think of an advanced 3D printer, okay? 3D printing now does extrusion. It typically extrudes plastic in layers and builds up a 3D part like that, okay? So that's good. It's able to make a lot of cool parts that way, right? We can download a design and print it out, right? But mostly it only works in plastic. So what do we need to expand on 3D printers to be able to make everything that we need for a comfortable lifestyle? We need to expand the number of materials that it can work with. We need glass. We need metals. We need Jello, we need solutions, we need a lot of different materials, and we need new processes. We're actually not new processes. We just need to miniaturize existing processes. So additive manufacturing, what a 3D printer does, we can do subtractive. That means cutting away things, including lathes, CNC machines and lasers, right? We need to grow things. Biology is a making strategy. So we need to foster on the micro level as well as plants. We need grow boxes that are efficient, much more efficient than growing outside, so we reduce land. We need origami, that's folding things together. We need to be able to cast things and make molds, right? We need to do, in short, the same thing. We need to do assembly, you know, putting parts together. We need to do the same things that factories already do. All we need to do is miniaturize the big factory. We need to go from big factories that produce millions of a few parts to of many kinds of things. You don't need 1,000 shoes. You need 6 of them, right? You don't need, 100 watermelons this week. One will be just fine, right? So if we can shrink the factory, kind of like what semiconductors did, right? From vacuum tubes down to integrated circuits, right? If we can do something roughly like that process to shrink it, get it small, and it has to be flexible. It has to be so flexible that it can make all its own parts so that the factory itself becomes essentially free. And then that factory will be distributed. There's a lot to do with raw materials. That's the biggest question I get about a factory. Where are we going to get the raw materials from? Okay, lots of places. First of all, you don't need lots of cups. You need a few of them. When you're tired of one cup or it breaks, throw it in your personal recycler. It melts down the plastic or the glass and makes a new cup, right? So you don't actually need a lot of stuff. So recycling, personal recycling, as a sort of a peripheral to this personal factory, can supply a lot of raw materials. Also, we can redesign things to use many different materials. Imagine a parametric design. Oh, do I need glass to make this? No, I could make plastics. Maybe I could make it out of a wood composite, something like that. There's a lot of different bamboo, a lot of different materials. So if we can substitute raw materials for other materials, then we can use the locally available materials to much greater effect, right? Design, we can design things to use less structure. Like this cup has pretty heavy, and it's kind of thick. It's about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch thick or something like that. With careful design, we can make most of the interior of this hollow space. When you do a 3D print, most of the printing area, the infill as it's called, is hollow, right? So we can use less material. There's a lot of tricks to get around the raw materials. What do we do for energy? We have the factory make solar cells. Now you can power the factory from the solar cells that it made, right? So, okay. Our time is very short, so I am going to skip to a demo of the software that I want to demo. Now, I need to share the screen. So, can I just do that here? I guess so.
Yeah, you can do that.
Let's see. Okay. Hopefully you are seeing the development environment here. Just a second. Okay. Now, this development environment is a complicated application. Why is it complicated? Because we want this development environment to design the processes that can make anything in a personal factory. And that's pretty big. Oh, how can we be confident it can make anything? We can't. But we rely on the idea of software. When you have a general purpose programming language with enough work and some libraries and stuff, pretty much you can do anything in the information space, okay? So we need to duplicate that characteristic of general purpose programming language into general purpose processes that can make anything, okay? So that's the idea here. Now, at the end of this, I'll paste in the chat where you can download this for free. This is open source software. It's come from my company, which is Haddington Dynamics. Haddington makes a robot. The robot looks like this. Okay, so here's, this is a 5-axis robot. This is the inventor of it, our Kent. He is the CTO of Haddington. let's see. So, you're going to be able to download this program and use it. Now, for the last several weeks, I have been working for this demo that I'm about to give, right? I tried to make a new release that has all this new stuff that makes it easier to get started with this environment. I failed. Last night, after midnight, I failed to put together a new release, okay? Technical glitch, it's going to happen, right? It's a complicated program, right? But hopefully in the next few days, I'll get that out. Nonetheless, there's still a lot of work here. I've been working on this for about 5 years, and there's a lot of stuff in here. Okay, first thing I want to show is when you download, the main thing is, see this big blue question mark? You click on this question mark, right? And this goes to the help system. Okay, DDE, Dexter Development Environment, is a teaching platform for itself. And this is all about all the different help mechanisms. There's about a dozen of them. They're all kinds of videos and software and documentation and everything. The documentation for this program is twice as thick as our book, Why Can't You Get Along? It's about, the book is 350 pages, about 700 pages, right? I'm not expecting you to read the whole thing because we have indexings. I want to show a video of something that the robot can do. This is on the Haddington website. Here is a video of the robot making face shields to protect people from COVID. Okay, so I'm gonna just run through this very quickly. Let me pause the video for a second. Okay, here, hopefully you can see my Herschel. Here is the robot, this 5-axis robot. Okay, right here is a glow-forged laser cutter. It's a commercial laser cutter. Okay, so we're using the laser cutter to cut plastic. Here's a computer that's controlling all the things. Let me just play the video a little more. Robot's picking up plastic, put it in. It advances these rolls right here, rolls to a new piece of plastic, clicks on something in a computer to start it, then clicks on a button on the Glowforge. Glowforge cuts out the part. When it's done with the part, the robot will pick up the plastic, drop it in, and repeat the cycle. Okay, a crucial thing about this is the robot. See the robot go down, touch the computer? That is restarting the job. See it touch that button? That's just the ordinary go button on the Glowforged box. It's not using a serial port with lots of fancy APIs or a web connection to control these machines. It's using the same affordances that people have when they're operating things. So one of our principles here is that the robot can use tools that you have in your garage now. It can use a screwdriver, it can use a wrench, right? It can pick those things up and use them, right? So that's a key, it's a key tenet of the environment. Okay, now, let me see. I'm gonna show you some things that are not going to be in the version that you can download now, but will be in the next version. I've got a lot, I'm doing a lot of stuff all the time, so I'm sorry this isn't available. Okay, down in this pane in the lower right, this is a simulator of the robot. And so you guys won't have a robot. The robots cost around $10,000. They're kind of expensive. Hopefully when we get the robot making more parts for itself, it will cut the costs, okay? So here's a robot. And we can control this robot with this dialog box. So I can move the robot by dragging this. It's 6-axis. I'm now dragging joint 1, right? So I'm dragging joint 1, it's rotating around. Now you'll notice as I'm dragging this green dot up here is moving. That's showing where, this is kind of like a top-down view showing the X and Y of the footprint. The footprint is this table, this white table down here, right? And this circle is the area that the robot can reach at its current altitude, at the Z-axis here. So if I drag, so I can drag the Z slider and we can see, oh, the area that it can reach can change. Now you notice this looks like a donut and there's kind of a donut hole here. The robot can't reach here because that's part of the robot itself. The robot can't reach inside of itself. It's just like you can't reach inside of your own foot, right? So as I move these controls, you'll notice I'm moving this Z-axis, and all these controls down here are sliding. So all these controls are connected to each other. So you can learn the kinematics of the robot. You can learn both how do we position stuff in X, Y, and Z, and how do we position it in the 5-axis parts of the robot. Okay, now we need to be able to, this is a text editor right here. You can enter JavaScript. Here's some JavaScript, right? We can select it. We can click the eval button, hit go, right? Okay. The core of, so you can write any JavaScript. This is a JavaScript development environment. You can, now, the core piece of software for controlling robots is called a job. So if I click this button down here, it inserts the JavaScript code that runs due to our libraries, it's not pure JavaScript, to run a job, okay? This is the framework of a job. Basically, a job is a name for a do list. A do list is instructions, and here's an instruction: move all joints. What does it mean to move all joints? Well, it means the first axis is moving to 25 degrees, second axis is moving to 21, third is 95, et cetera, right? And ultimately, and we actually have 7 axes. We've got a couple 2 axes on the end. It's basically a 5 axis, but we got 2 axes for end effectors, okay? All right, so now we've done that. Now let's say we want to have another instruction, right? We click this instruction button, we insert another instruction. Now that instruction initially looks the same as the first one, but we can change it by moving this slider. You notice as I'm moving J1 slider, this number is changing. Used to be 45, now it's 46, right? So we can, sorry, let me reselect that. So as we're moving the GUI, we're changing the code, right? How cool is that, right? We're making the transition between a graphical user interface and code right here. Okay, let me insert another instruction, and we can go on like this, making more instructions. Now, let's say we made a mistake. Oh, I want to go back here and edit this guy. So we click the mouse up here on that expression, we click the editor button, and it yanks in that into this, and if we into the GUI, and if you could see it, it would move the simulator there, and now we can go and edit that instruction, right? Okay, when we're all done with this, what do we have? We have a job. We can evaluate a job, and it creates an instance of job, and then we can, let me show the simulator here. We click on the job button, and that starts to run the job, and I don't know if you could see it, but the robot moved just slightly in running that job. Okay, there's a lot of tools in here. Many of the tools, let me get rid of, many of the tools are for helping people learn JavaScript. So here you go. Here's a menu, learning JavaScript. It's like all the basic stuff in JavaScript: math, Booleans, comparisons, strings, arrays, date, all this different kind of stuff for learning JavaScript. So a lot of tools. So if you don't know JavaScript, not a problem. And if in case you're a Python programmer, I wrote a new section of our user guide that says JavaScript for Python programmers. And the upshot is not very difficult to make the transition, especially for the kinds of things that you need to do in this environment. Okay, Henry, we got 15 minutes here. I want to stop, the kind of the makerism and shift on to other areas. Henry, do you want to comment right now?
No, I think that was a great presentation.
I can't hear you. Are you on mute? Oh. I'm going to stop screen sharing.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, okay. I had my... okay, go ahead, Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Fry. That was marvelous presentation. I don't have too much. We didn't get time. David Miltzner wanted to talk a little bit about education. So maybe you want to talk about education. Or David, do you want to make a comment for us?
Yeah.
Okay, please do.
I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk about it. My background is psychology and education, so there's a lot of things that I've been working on that are related what you're talking about. I think the whole systemization of this is like a huge paradigm shift. And I think it's brilliant work. And it has a lot of potential. I think the way our own personal autonomy works, our own empowerment, the way we work within systems is really handicapped right now by power structures, by how some ideas are not even considered worthy of consideration. Even I heard it a new term, identity. Identity defining what knowledge is, so that if I'm a white male, I can't be knowledgeable about another person's experiences, or you can't be, if you're not a white male, you can't be knowledgeable about my experiences. These are the kinds of things that are keeping us apart, and we really have to figure out the kinds of how to operationalize and what what ways we can implement the kinds of things you're talking about. What I fear is we'll get enamored by the engineering and the brilliant new shiny objects that we can make, and we forget about how there are forces in this world right now that don't want to see this happen, and they're very powerful, and they have their fingers on the levers of power, and people like us don't. Okay. So we really have to understand deeply about how to build a consensus, global, changing consciousness of imagination, hope, and solidarity. And as an educator, this is the kind of things I would like to try to help bring into our systems, our educational systems.
Yeah, thank you, David. That was excellent. So I just want to say a few words about what we do talk about education in the book. In general, the approach that we advocate for education is what's called constructionism. I started out my career at MIT working with Seymour Papert on the educational language logo and some of the first serious uses of computers in education. And so the idea is that the constructionism is contrasted with instructionism, which is conventional education. Right. And the idea is that learners construct knowledge in their own heads by the scientific method, by making hypotheses and understanding principles and so forth. The traditional schools are basically like factories. They assume the student is an empty head and they're going to pour knowledge into the student's head. And the job of the student is just to receive what the educational system is putting out, right? But what we want to do is encourage the scientific method. We want to encourage people to be curious, to be creative. And so it's a whole different, the whole constructionist philosophy is around that, of being student-centered, of project-based learning, of learning by doing. And I also recommend, David, perhaps you know, but there's an educational philosopher, Alfie Cohen, who talks about competition and cooperation in education. And that was really important to me. Education should be cooperative. It shouldn't be the teacher against the student and the testing and all that stuff. It should be the student and the teacher working together to both to learn, and to teach, both in both directions. So those are just some of the elements of the general philosophy of education that we advocate. Self-directed education, online learning. These are all the new things, right? We think that, and we think in general, so, we say, okay, the economy and justice and politics, where do we start? It's all so entangled. And if you try to untangle any piece of it, then the rest of the stuff causes you to fail. So we think education is kind of the most important impact point. And so we're educators, you're an educator. What we're doing right now is education. We want to listen to all the voices, and then we can, so I think that's what we're trying to do. How do you change the world? How do you get started? Well, you educate. How do you start educating? Well, you write a book and you start talking to people who will listen, okay? And you have a course. So that's what we're doing, because we think that's the most important way to get started. And so thank you for bringing up education. We wish we had more time to talk about it, but that's roughly what we think.
Okay,
Great.
thank you very much. I'm so glad you brought David in, and there are two things in my mind right now. The program is going on until August 1st, which is the last day. So I will see if anywhere I could have some 15, 30 minutes between now and then, and see if you can bring him, David, to talk about that. But ultimately, September 8th is the International Day for Literacy. And literacy for me, is something totally new than when we heard literacy in the past. So if not now, when we celebrate the International Day for Literacy, I think we are going to have a very good component on that. We bring you, all of you again, and with David, and then to really plan some, Matt also, Murray, about what if, curiosity learning and things like that. So we're definitely going to get together. This is just the beginning. Welcome to the team, David, and our new ambassadors will tell you that once you get in, you are part of the family. Okay, thank you. I'll let, I don't know if a student have one or two more questions. Let the floor to the students. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have Joseph Opaku. Joseph Opaku, could you unmute yourself?
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. I didn't think I'd have a chance to speak, so I was writing away furiously. And
can you tell us where you're coming from, Joseph?
Yes, introduce yourself.
I'm Nigerian, but I live in New York, in the home of the pandemic. And I was itching so much to say something, and you just floored me with this. I think that there are fundamental issues of assumptions. I think that when we presume a global dialogue, when in fact it is a private soliloquy. So when Christopher, I will talk hopefully later, when Christopher talks about the world, he talks about America, which is really a young kid in the history of man, going through the challenges of adolescence. We essentially do not create a global environment that allows for an exciting dialogue with the best minds in the world in whatever language, about whatever experience. So our first challenge is to really open up this dialogue. We all want to get along, but I mean, I believe that this pandemic offers a lot of advantage because of the fact that we are humbled by something that is invisible, has no bank account, and has no nuclear weapons. We need to learn that listening to other people is both exciting intellectually and emotionally, reassuring. So that's just, I've been sending a lot of notes to you as I was listening. Thanks for bringing me in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Please reach out to us also, and we'll continue the discussion. Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sergio has a question. Sergio, could you unmute?
Yes, hello. I'm Sergio. I'm from Colombia, here in Latin America. And I have a question for each one of the presentators. First, for Mr. Henry, when you brought the comment of these cryptocurrencies and these type of things, don't you think this blockchain technology may be a type of technological cooperation? And for Mr. Christopher, I was thinking about this lack of government, or kind of, we don't need this type of things, but on nature, we need kind of a hierarchy. Then who or what could decide who the leader is in order to guide the process?
Go first, Henry.
Okay.
The first question.
Yeah. So I want to keep an open mind on this blockchain and Bitcoin stuff because I don't think I understand it really well. But when people say blockchain increases trust or Bitcoin increases trust, I think what they mean is they start with an underlying assumption that people don't trust each other or everybody's untrustworthy. And then they want to introduce some technical thing to cause to be more trustworthy in an untrustworthy world. And I think that's putting it backwards. Okay, because what you want to have is a trustworthy world. We want to start out with the default assumption that people are good and they're going to be trusting each other. Okay, and then say, given that, how can we cooperate? I don't believe that we can start out with an untrustworthy world where people don't cooperate, where they don't have empathy, and then we can introduce technical means to cause it. So, they're connected, and I understand how, blockchain is just a database technology, and having reliable distributed databases is a good idea. So I have no objection to it, but I don't think that we're going to establish trust by some technical means in an untrustworthy world. I think we have to that's where we have to go inside people's heads and change people's minds and attitudes and empathy. And then I think so I would like to do that first, and then we'll see how much blockchain or Bitcoin we need or something. But that's just my feeling about it. I just think that stuff is not in the right direction.
Yeah, and to amplify what Henry's saying, the way to really solve problems is to make the people that are causing the problems happy. If we rely on handcuffs or guns or jails or something, then they're going to find ways to work around it. They're going to find, we want to get at the root of the human motivation. Now, to address the hierarchy issue, I love hierarchies. It's my favorite data structure. You'll see them all over the development environment I just created, right? Let's talk about, why do we need a government? Imagine a world where every house is self-sufficient. That means grows its own food, gets its own heat, its own energy, doesn't need to be connected to sewer lines, right? Doesn't need water because it gets water off the roof, gets everything it needs for material wealth. Okay, what else do we need? We need communication. So a lot of people have these things now, right? Cell phones. It is possible to have a network technology where the cell phones communicate with each other. It's called a mesh network, where we won't even need cell phone towers as infrastructure. Okay, so a lot of the things that government does is provide infrastructure, but we don't need an energy infrastructure. We don't need a communications infrastructure. We don't need a water infrastructure. And you'll see, we talk a lot about transportation. We have a section in the book about transportation. We can drastically reduce our transportation infrastructure. Okay, what else does government do? Well, let's just look at where it spends the money. It spends the money on war. Now, imagine everybody's living in their own self-sufficient house. Do they want to go attack Russia, or China, or Iran, or North Korea, or something? No, they don't really care about those guys. And those other people in those countries, do they want to attack America, or England, or Ghana, or where? No, they don't care about those guys. We're just living, and we're creating art and writing books and teaching classes, right? So a lot of the need for government evaporates when we have self-sufficiency. And I outlined a government where it does not have a real hierarchy. There are no leaders per se. I don't want the individuals that get chosen randomly for the legislature to be famous. They don't even need to be known. We want their reasoning skills, not their fame. We don't need a president.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just one. We'll take one last question from Daniel Navarro, and then we'll stop. How's that, Guy?
Okay, perfect. Good.
Okay.
I have a question about the...
Introduce yourself again, please.
My name is Daniel Navarro. I'm from Colombia. And I have a question about the explanation that sets Christopher Fry of the question that made my friend Sergio. So, yeah, imagine a world with all houses auto-sufficient and auto-sustainable, but what about these people that they are not with the society and they are like making bad things, like the thieves, these old guys that are making like distortion, these guys that are like serial killers and all these things, and we don't have a government, we don't have a president, we don't have a hierarchy. So how we are going to deal with all of these situations that are happening around the world? Because if you see, there are many groups in Africa that make this, and they don't let that the cities develop well. So that's my question.
Okay, so let's talk about thieves. If you can make whatever you need, why would you need to steal anything? But if somebody did steal something from you, you just make another one. And if somebody steals your personal your personal factory, you go to your next door neighbor and say, hey, guy stole my personal factory last night. He says, oh, that's too bad. I'll print you out another one. Come back, in a few days and I'll give it to you, right? Now, who joins ISIS? Who joins the terrorist groups, in Africa? And who are those people? Well, they're poor. Gee, they couldn't get a job. The easiest way to make money is to join this group. It's going to give me some prestige, going to give me some power. I'll get a gun. People will think I'm powerful. They'll like me, right? But if we solve scarcity, why do you need to join a gang? Look at the gangs in Mexico, right? What do? They make money off selling, cocaine to the United States. But if you can make your own cocaine, you don't need to buy any cocaine. So the cartels dry up. Plus, the people in Mexico also have their own factories. So they don't need to join a gang to make money because they can just, print out bananas and tortillas.
Yeah, but like an example that you were saying, like if you can make your own cocaine, why you are going to buy it? But then we are going to have the problem of the I don't know, guys. Someone that speaks Spanish can tell me how do you say sobredosis on all of these things. People are overdose. All these people that are drug addicts are going to make their own drugs, so they are going to take those drugs all the days. So what is going to happen with all these people? And
so in the United States, some people have said that in the inner cities of the United States, it's easier to buy heroin than to buy milk. The problem, we have lots of availability of drugs, and yet somehow everybody isn't on heroin. Why is that, right? But now let's take those same people and give them a better lifestyle. They're secure, right? So now they're happier and they'll be less likely. I'm not saying that there won't be some people that zone out on drugs. Sure, it'll happen. But with David's help on education, right, with some of the psychologists that are hopefully on this call, we'll start figuring out addiction problems. Why do we happen? Let's make people happier. Let's give them more respect. Let's have them less reason to be depressed. And let's make the world an exciting place. I mean, we're going to have some fun things in virtual reality, in being able to make whatever you want, and able to start a rock band because you have the time to do it, to paint pictures, to do pottery. I think the world's going to be a lot more fun when we have this self-sufficiency, and it'll be a less need to do some of the kinds of destructive behaviors that people now do.
Thank you. I enjoy a lot this conference. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's mind-blowing just conceiving something different. And Daniel, we are also going to talk later about the Peace Land, okay? So which is where we are going to implement all these things, right? So I want to thank our speakers today and all of you. It's been an amazing journey. And a few things, one thing that they say that I think is more important for us to look, there's a couple of systems. One thing they've said the first time we met was that somehow, some way, nothing is new in this world. We just have to find a way to kind of bring the best in all some of these things that we've learned. One, for instance, one of the longest state that we have in the world, people don't realize, is the Vatican. When they do the elections, I've never seen a campaign of a pope. No, a pope say elect me, but they have a system by which they elect a pope, which is something a little bit, I was told it was democratic. So I'm just saying it is some of all the elements individually as something that we've seen somewhere, okay? And the amazing thing also we heard today, and I heard from them before, yes, we all rely on science. That is what has made the world what it is today. But yet they don't have a pope or president, it doesn't matter how we call it. They don't have a, so there's something there that we can work with. And that's why I think the time is now. I strongly, in conclusion, after listening to you today, I do think that, yes, that peace in our lifetime is possible. So all the delegates here, I think will join me in thanking you, because now that we see some element again, if we don't have the need, the fear and the need, I think and for the longest time, people thought the peace was going to come around the world because all these countries are going to sign cooperation agreement and things like that. No, definitely, I totally agree. It is not going to happen. Yesterday, Josh started his conference, say, peace without authorization, right? Without permission. So that's what we are doing here at UNESCO Center for Peace. That's what we are doing. We are not asking anybody to give us authorization. We are going to create our peace land, and before they realize we live in peace, in harmony, and usually just that small, and then oh my God, they actually did it, and then gradually we are going to bring a peace around the world. So I would like to thank you one more time. We are going to probably bring you back again, because between now and the end of conference, and again to talk about the lecture that we'll be having down the road, and the partnership and all these possibilities. So we are going to, the next thing is that I think there's a studio where they usually bring the speakers at the end of the show like this for a Q&A. And some of the student delegates that have not able to ask question may also, I think Nidia will be ready, and she'll be sending you the link shortly, and then we meet in the conference. Okay. Thank you very much. You. Okay, thank you, and all have a wonderful Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Lieberman and Mr. Fry, you already have the invitation to the interview in your email. I sent it to you like 15 minutes ago.
Got it.
Yeah, that's our, yes, Irely is our journalist. Thank you. You're doing an amazing job, Irely. I want to thank you for this opportunity, okay? Okay.
And I just pasted into the chat a few URLs that you can use to find more information, download the software.
Okay, thank you. So we are turning over to, I think, Rodrigo, are you there? Sarah, are you guys there? Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 Because they'll be coming back for the acknowledgement. We'll do that again at another time, okay? We turn over to you, and we are going to the conference room for the okay. Oh, she's 20 minutes? Mm-hmm. Maybe if that's the case, I don't know. I'm for taking more questions for a student, if you guys are okay with it.
Yeah, why not?
We have the cultural
show.
Where's the cultural show?
But it's not yet, I think. It's later.
So what time is the cultural show?
Right now, like 11.
Yeah, it is right now.
Okay, that's what I meant. Okay, we are going to the interview. You got the show, and then after the show, the next. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, see you, Christopher and Henry. See you in the broadcasting room in a minute. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Sarah. Are you there?
It's Masmadi. He is here. Masmadi?
Hi, Rodrigo.
Hello, Masmadi. How are you doing?
Okay, he's having some.
We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me?
You have a slow in. I think if you turn the camera off, we can hear you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
All right. So my camera is off. I'm sorry, guys, because I'm also in a moving car.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, don't worry.
So is it better?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's better.
better.
The floor is yours, Masmadi.
All right. So all right, he is doing a live show. He's performing with the vibe. So if Anish Hans is here, can you please connect and then we'll have like an awesome time. Anish, are you here?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. I am Tanish Hans Purigunta.
Awesome.
I'm 20 years old and I live in Malaysia. Today I want to present a song which is called Take 5. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunny. That was amazing. That was really, really beautiful. Thank you so much for this beautiful exposition of talents. That was awesome. So next we have hello, can you
Yes,
guys
we
hear
can hear
me?
you. Yes.
Mariana?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Mariana, I want to be hearing your feedback so that I know you guys can hear me.
If you want, I can take over.
If that's all right.
Yes, that's okay. Thank you. So our next performance will be Tamate.
All right.
Tamate.
So next performer is he's all the way from Ghana. He's my personal best friend. So oh yeah, sure. That's okay. So Tamate, you are here. Please,
so let's wait for Masmadi's feedback to end.
a very beautiful.
Okay, so hi Tamate. So you can start your performance. Thank you for waiting.
And I do remember, and I filled with all these memories. Wanna know how much you care for me? I can't forget. Your heart is where I wanna be. I'll never leave tonight. Hold me till the night turns into day. Tell me how hard your heart has fallen for me. If I mean that much to you, then stay. Promise I won't let you go until tomorrow. Tomorrow. And I do remember, and I feel with all these memories. I can't forget you. No, remember me to know I won't leave for nothing. Please God, the day has got to end this year and someday. I wouldn't trade you, babe, for anything. Hold me till the night is in today. Tell me how hard your heart is falling for me. If I mean that much to you, stay. Promise I won't let you go until tomorrow. Tomorrow. No, tomorrow. Oh, I can't forget you. So know you want somebody else, and you're no good for my health. I can't even get nowhere. Why you putting me through hell? Dear Lord, oh God, please help me. I gave my heart and hurt me. I lost my mind to loving. Maybe we should hold on, give one more try, and take another chance and tell you that I love you still. But maybe this is hopeless. We should let this go and pick up broken pieces. I don't know. Maybe we could try. I don't know. Maybe we could try.